The ancient sport of chess is about to change forever. Welcome to the highest stakes chess tournament in history, featuring the game's most talented grandmasters and a large pool of players from around the world, all playing for $1 million purse. Welcome to the first ever Millionaire Chess Open from the main ballroom of Planet Hollywood on the Las Vegas Strip. Chess will never be the same.
Welcome everybody to the tiebreaks of the Millionaire Chess Open. It's Sunday night here in Las Vegas. As we can see, the players all pent up, excited, and I bet very, very nervous. They're preparing for the tiebreak rounds. The tiebreak, why? To qualify for Millionaire Monday. They are fighting for, in the open place, $100,000 for players who have qualified to compete in the tie breaks. This is very exciting. Let's look at some graphics to see what they're fighting for. My name is Ariane Kouili. I'm here with Grandmaster Robert Hess and International Master Lawrence Trent. Let's have a look at what this tie break is all about. Here we go. So this is the road to the final four. It is a four-player round robin in the open section. So that means that the four players will all be playing each other. And in the event of a tie, the players will go to a blitz match, which is a 5-minute game without any increment or extra time. In the event of another tie, the players will go to an Armageddon match, which is going to be extremely exciting. And we can't wait for that. Let's see, for the amateur sections, I believe they will also be playing similar tie break, depending on how many there are in each section. But basically, it's 15-minute games for now. And if we have still a ties, then we go into 5-minute games. So again, just to recap, blitz matches are fast chess. Nerves are all on the line. Each player has only 5 minutes for the entire game. And in Armageddon, what happens then? Well, that's when, in the blitz games, it's all a tie. This Armageddon match is really going to be nerve-wracking because it basically guarantees a winner. Black has a slight advantage on time because the player with the black pieces claims victory by either a win or a draw. To compensate, the white pieces has more time. Now, traditionally in tournaments, Armageddon, white has only 1 more minute more, but here at the Millionaire Chess Open, white will have 1.5 minutes more, but he has to win with that extra 1.5 minutes because a draw means a victory for black. Here we can see the participants of the open section on camera. They are ready and waiting, listening to the rules for this tie-break section. They will have 15 minutes each with a 5-second delay in their time, and they will all be playing each other, which is called a round robin. Trent, have you got any thoughts for this very exciting section of the tournament?
Yeah, I've got lots of thoughts. I can't wait to see these guys actually play against each other. 4 of them, so it's a nice round number, 3 games, and we may very well see a couple of winners after the 15-minute games. After all, 2 of them qualify. It's not out of the question that 2 of them go through. You would have to say that at the moment, Yu Yangyi being the top seed, he's the favorite. And then after that, the next 3, it's anybody's pick. It's really unclear. I don't know about you, Robert. You know Daniel Naroditsky better than I do. What's his rapid skills like?
Well, it's not only about rapid skills, Lawrence. It's about who gets the 2 whites. That'll be an essential advantage because there are only 3 rounds. That means 2 of the players will get 2 whites and 1 black, while the other 2 will get 2 blacks and 1 white. So it depends on who gets what color, and then we'll figure out from there. However, Daniel Naroditsky is an absolute beast when it comes to quick chess. I know we've played many games, and he's been known to crush me on many occasions. So I think Daniel Naroditsky has very good opportunity to advance here, but I agree with you, Lawrence. Yangyi Yu is the definite favorite, overwhelming favorite, and I'm pretty positive he'll advance.
And let's remember that this is what they're playing for. Only 2 places left for Millionaire Monday. Grandmaster from the Philippines, Wesley So, already qualified, along with American junior Ray Robson. They are in for Millionaire Monday, and who's going to join them? Well, only 2 players from these 4 Grandmasters. We have Yu Yangyi, Grandmaster from China, Sergei Azarov, Daniel Naroditsky, and Zhao Jinshao. They are 2 Chinese players in that mix, and as we had Wesley So on earlier, who expressed his desire for no Chinese guy to join him on Millionaire Monday. But let's see, it's 50-50 chance there. We have 2 Chinese Grandmasters in this tiebreak, and as we can see on screen, Daniel Naroditsky there getting ready for his game against Sergei Azarov. Do we know which player got unlucky and didn't get the 2 whites?
Well, it looks like Daniel Naroditsky's staying with the black pieces, which means he'll get 2 blacks of the 3 games. Azarov and whoever's white on the other board will have the 2 whites. So Sergei has to be so ecstatic right now. He lost his first round. We all remember that killer upset by Justice Williams all the way back in round 1. Seems forever ago. Hopefully, it seems forever ago for him as well, because he needs to keep in mind that everything is on the table right now. It's not in the past, it's the present, and he's got a great chance to advance.
Well, he's looking so focused there. It looks like he's just ready to slice this up. But, you know, everyone is looking to slice this one up. They all want the one of those 2 places. There are only 2, so we're going to have 2 definite losers, 2 definite winners, while Wesley So and Ray Robson are just sitting back and watching this mess. But it's an exciting mess. Lawrence, who's your tip?
Well, my tip, I have to go with the favorite here. Yu Yangyi is by far the rating favorite. He's played the best chess as well, let's face it. He's never really been in trouble. He didn't quite manage to win all of his games. He didn't really get lucky, if I can use that word, like Ray Robson did, because Ray was in deep trouble today. But he's going to be okay, and I think really it's going to be you. And if I had to pick another one, you know what? I'm going to go with Naroditsky, because he's been playing well. He's young. He's probably got a bit more energy. Azarov might be quite tired already after that game this morning. So I'm going to go with you and Naroditsky as my picks. But it's quick chess, 15 minutes. Anything can happen. It's going to be full of fun, though. That's what we're here for.
Well, exactly. And let's remind everybody that it's not just about the open section. We have, I think, 5 other amateur sections who are also having tie breaks. So if the open section dries up in the action, we'll certainly go to those boards, because they're also vying for their spots for Millionaire Monday. Is it possible to get the prizes up on the screen to remind everybody what these guys are playing for? Okay, here we go. The open section. Total payout, $409,000. Champion walks away with $100,000. Second place, $50,000. Third place, $25,000. And fourth place, $14,000. Which means that the 2 people that survive the tiebreak today will walk away with a guaranteed $14,000 and an upper limit there of $100,000. So they are certainly playing for some big money today. The amateurs as well. Let's have a look at what they're playing for. Total payout of $448,000 for these 4 amateur sections, walking away with some big money. Again, they're guaranteed to walk away with $5,000, the people that survive this tiebreak round this evening. And of course, we have the under 1400 section, probably the only place in tournament in history where an under 1400 can win $24,000 for first place. So we'll definitely be looking at those tiebreak games. Here we are in the tournament hall. These players must be so nervous. Robert, I know that you've played a lot of tournaments in your time. You're a strong grandmaster. How would you feel if you were sitting at one of those chairs right now?
Yeah, it's hard to remain calm because you know how much money's on the line. You know that a chance to qualify for the Final Four is there. But at the same time, you need to remove all outside thought, all distraction. It's pretty easy to get caught up in the hoopla of, well, $100,000, I need to win, I need to win. No, you don't need to win. You need to play the best moves on the board. You need to remain objective. And I've talked to Daniel Naroditsky. I've known him for years. He's a very strong player. And I agree with Lawrence. I have faith in him. I think that he's going to remain calm, but you can't count other GMs like Azarov out. He's a very strong player. He's been around the world competing in elite events for a long time. And I think all of them are both nervous and calm at the same time, simply because they're grandmasters, their experience. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Well, you know what, Robert and Lawrence, I'm going to disagree with both of you. I am going for the Chinese players in this tiebreak because I personally think that they are the most experienced in terms of handling this high-level chess, high-pressured stakes. You know, they're extremely experienced, and I'm just going with them. You know, sad for Wesley So, of course, but I think that Yu Yangyi and Zhao Jinchao will get through this tiebreak. But let's see. It's going to be very, very tight. And you know, I want to remind everybody that this is all about time when you think about it. Unlike the other previous rounds where they've had a few hours to think about moves, they only have 15 minutes in this game. And that's not a lot of time to get an advantage, establish an advantage, grow that advantage, and win. Especially, you know, when you got down to the last few minutes, you've got to make some critical decisions, and ticking in the back of your mind is that $100,000 prize.
Yeah, and as we just saw in the last round, we saw Ray Robson beat David Berkshires, and a large reason for that was the time. Berkshires did not have a lot of time left with a very complex position. Ray Robson had about 15 minutes to Berkshires 4, and that really came to his advantage. He was able to ice the victory mainly because of the time left on the clock. So with 15 minutes to begin with, you can't waste time. Every second is precious, and the players need to remain composed and use their time wisely.
Lawrence, what is your take on the players and their openings for this kind of time control?
Well, I think you've got to also bear in mind that it isn't a one-game match here. This isn't, the ultimate game for them, potentially. They've got to play 3 games, and you've got to be smart about that. So you don't want to go all guns blazing, the absolute high risk in the first game, especially, for example, with black, because it's not a must-win situation just yet. There might come the time when you have to win to even have a theoretical chance of staying in, but at the moment, they're all on 0 points, so I think they're going to start off cautiously. But I do think that the guys with the white pieces are going to push a lot more. I think if you're black, for example, Daniel Naroditsky here playing against Azarov, I think if that one's a draw, he'll be more than happy because then he'll get white the next game and be able to apply the pressure. So I think guys with black will be looking just to make sure they don't lose. The guys with white, a bit more ambitious. But remember, 3 games and 2 out of 3 will secure it for you, I believe, mathematically. So 2 points out of 3, a win and 2 draws, or even 2 wins and a loss. So you can theoretically afford a loss and still qualify. It's going to be exciting.
Yes, we can see them there at the board. I reckon what's going through their minds is, what am I going to play? They haven't had time to prepare for this match, unlike previous rounds where they could go to their hotel room perhaps for 30 minutes, an hour, even 2, and see what their opponent plays, look in the database, and prepare their strategy. But here, they've just been thrown into this pairing. They don't know what color, they didn't know what color they were going to be. And now they're looking around, but in their minds they're thinking, okay, what's my strategy? What am I going to play? I've got 15 minutes. That's not a lot of time. Robert.
Yes?
Well, I mean, you're a super grandmaster. I want to know what's going through your mind.
Well, I just think that the advantage of having the white pieces isn't as big a deal with 15 minutes on the clock. Because if it's a complex game, both sides don't have much time. I think the more time on the clock, really the greater percentage white has to win. But at the same time, if you are solid and maintain a slight nagging advantage, and black needs to calculate how to maintain at least only a slight disadvantage and not a larger one, then it can really come into white's favor. I think that Yangyi Yu is really the heavy favorite because, as you said, there's no time to prepare. If there's no time for everyone to prepare, they're on neutral territory, and Yangyi Yu's natural state is a better chess player than the other 3 involved.
Thank you, Robert, for your insights. Now let's go and have a look at some of the amateurs who are no less important. They are, well, I'd say a much less experienced in this kind of field, this kind of atmosphere of having a tiebreak and kind of a must-win, must-be solid kind of play. I wonder what's going through their mind. They're sitting at about, what, 2,300, 2,200? And there we see Grandmaster Maurice Ashley reading out the rules. I reckon that they are just as nervous, much less experienced, so who knows what they're going to play. They don't have the amount of opening knowledge as our open section Grandmasters do. So I think that a lot of their thinking process will be managed by nerves rather than thinking objectively, okay, I've got to play this opening with white, this opening with black. And also, you got to remember that our open section participants, the grandmasters, they know their opponents. They can recall games. They've probably played each other before, or these grandmasters, they often look through the database. They look at games every day, every week, and they can try and recall, okay, Azarov plays this, Yang Yu, he plays towards this opening, he gravitates towards these kind of positions. But the amateurs, they don't really have any clue what their opponent's playing, and so theirs is really just guesswork.
Yeah, but I think that also is an interesting point, but some of these players play a lot of quicker time controls. If you're an amateur, you generally have less time to play chess, you're not a professional player. And in the United States especially, there are a lot of Game 30 tournaments. I grew up in New York City. We had a lot of quick time controls. So players like Ron Burnett, he's an international master. He's been around the block. He's played a lot of chess in his day. He's probably used to the quick time control. I think that actually gives him an advantage within this rating class. Not to mention, all these players are in the open section. They've competed against grandmasters. They've fought their way to this stage where they're competing for their class prize. So just because their rating is a little bit lower, I really think they all are fighters. They all have experience. And when we get down to the sections like under 1,400, well, now it's anybody's ball game. We certainly don't know these players. We're meeting them for the first time right now on the stage. So they very well may be nervous people.
That's right. Now let's get to some graphics of these pure matchups here. Odds of winning, 78% for Sergei Azarov versus the young Daniel Naroditsky. I think that's quite a lot, but let's see how the youngster handles that game. Odds of winning for the two Chinese sitting at about 50%. I'm going to go with Zhao Jinchao here. You know why? He's slightly older, he's probably a bit more calm, and he's white.
Yeah, he's the white pieces. These ratings actually are a little bit of mix of US and FIDE ratings because Azarov is not 100 points higher than Naroditsky. He's probably more like 30 points. And so his odds of winning are listed here at 78%. I think they're more around 55. I think it's a very close battle between two fierce competitors. In the matchup of the Chinese players, I'm really going to have to disagree with you. I understand that Zhao is the older player, but Yang Yu has been phenomenal lately. He won an Olympic gold medal for himself as the individual, but mainly for the country of China. He's used to that kind of pressure. If you can win a gold medal on that stage, he can accomplish anything.
Absolutely.
I would go all in on Yang Yu in this competition.
Perhaps you're right, Robert. Lawrence, any insights on these key matchups?
Well, it's interesting the way they've been matched up in the first round. You've got to bear that in mind. So already Yang Yu, he's playing black against Jian Xiaozhao, and it's really going to be fascinating. Were Yang Yu to win this in the first round with black, meaning that he's got white, I would really put everything I have in my pocket on him going through. But that said, if it's a draw, or even if Zhao causes an upset, everything's up in the... It's very difficult to predict because with 15 minutes, it's a different ball game, and that's why we have different ratings or different seedings for rapid tournaments. If you look at the official World Chess rating lists, if you look at Magnus Carlsen's rating, it's different at a shorter time control than it is at a longer one. So we are measured according to our ability at shorter time. But I fully agree with Robert with what he said before, that Yang Yu, you've got to remember, this is a guy who's now playing elite chess. He's so well prepared in the opening that not being able to find that bit of time just to prepare a little something that perhaps he isn't expecting gives him a real edge. So I'm going to go for him, and I'm going to stick with Naroditsky just because I think he's switched on. I think he's got a great chance. He's good at rapid. It's just going to be exciting. They're waiting. This is the worst part for me. I've had a few of these in my time where I've had tie breaks and I've had to wait for 20 minutes. It's sitting there, you're waiting, you're kind of nervous, you just want the game to start already. But of course, they've got a lot of things to work out, make sure everything is in order. And you can see there, Zhao, they're thinking about what to do. They really are. They're crunching. What opening should I play if he plays e4? What should I do if he plays d4? It's going to be, they're nervous, they're getting up, bottles of water everywhere. But he looks like a figure of peace and tranquility, doesn't he? Does he look nervous to you? Doesn't to me, just looks focused, concentrated. But this is big for him. He needs to make this. If he were to qualify, so Yang Yi, Robson, already we've got 3 guys there, makes the final tomorrow where they really play for the money.
You got to remember, though, Lawrence, that in these shorter time controls, it's often, not always, but often that the weaker player or the weaker rated grandmaster will have more chances. You can see this in previous candidates matches, world championship matches, where there hasn't been a result achieved in the longer time control. And then when it goes to the tiebreak, so 30-minute games, 50-minute games, it is not the favorite, but the weaker grandmaster that wins because of the shorter time control. There's just more chances for mistakes, more chances for the stronger or the favorite to blunder.
There's a certain element of truth in that. I was actually at the World Cup last year, so I saw that firsthand. I saw how the likes of Tomaszewski, for example, progressed right the way till the end. He was certainly not one of the top seeds, still a 2700 Grandmaster, an elite player essentially, but he wasn't expected to really make it. So there is definitely a certain element in truth that even though they're weaker on paper when it comes to the long time controls, that they might be more specialized in the shorter time controls. But that said, still, class is class, experience is experience. Robert mentioned how Yu Yangyi's been on the top stage with China. So it is how you handle the pressure. But I agree with you. I think anything is possible. And we're going to, the thing I'm really excited about, it's seeing the big mistakes, the big errors. That's not because I'm a sadist or anything like that. I don't enjoy seeing people get hurt, especially emotionally, but it's good for us as neutrals, as fans. It provides a lot of action. What we saw earlier today with David Bercius was, it affected me. It affected me as a chess player.
Heartbreaking. It
was heartbreaking, and I really felt it. I was welling up. I felt so bad for him. And that's the sort of drama we want to create. After all, this is trying to make chess a spectator sport, and we can see there a shot of David Bercius. I mean, look at that. That is a man who is absolutely inconsolable. There's nothing on this earth that can make him feel happy right now, apart from being in this playoff. So it's just going to be great. It's going to be so action-filled. And we're just waiting for the games to start. I think, here we go. They're off.
Here we go. They're off.
We're going to wait for the moves to come through.
But look how quickly they're moving. I mean, they want to conserve as much time as possible. That is essential in the early stages. We know that grandmasters are used to making extensive preparation, so they know the first, let's say, 5, 10, 15 moves of opening theory, and that way they don't have to waste time in the early stages.
And as you can see, the clocks haven't moved despite them making moves because there is a 5-second delay, which means that they can conserve their time, conserve their energy for the middle of the game where decisions will take a little longer to think about. Let's have a look at, who should we look at, the 2 Chinese first?
Well, we haven't got the moves through just yet, so maybe what we can do is, in the absence of the moves on our board, maybe we can get a close-up of the board, the live board, and that might make things even more interesting to see the reactions of these players and just talk about the games in a more general sense before they come through on our own analysis boards, because they're moving quickly and they just have to configure the things. So.
Yeah, it looks like they're moving too quickly for even our boards to keep up with them. But I think it's important not to move too quickly. You can get under the false pretense that you have to move instantaneously every single move. And here we see the players are actually sitting for a think, and that's very important. 15 minutes, though being very, very short amount of time, is longer than you think. If you just count up the total minutes, 30 minutes of total chess, you don't have to make every move within 5 seconds. And here we see Zhao is thinking, Yang Yu was just thinking on his turn. And, it's good to spend at least a couple seconds, maybe 30, 40 seconds in the early stage to set up your strategy to make sure that you're not making any silly mistakes.
Absolutely. Maybe we can, I'm not sure if we can pan slightly left there with our camera, just so we can get a kind of side-on view of the board. To make things easier, we can see the clock times there as well. Perhaps we can do that in a moment. But basically, by what I can see on the board, we've got a very well-known Queen's Pawn opening called the Rogozin defense. It's been played a lot recently at top level. It's actually almost taken over as the main weapon for black at top level because it's been achieving great results. Not because black's been winning so much, but white's found it very difficult to break through this solid defense. So again, as soon as we have more moves, we'll go over that. But solid for white, solid for black. No fireworks just yet in this particular game. I don't know if we can either pan or perhaps go to the next game. Oh, beautiful. Look at that. That's
Great shot.
It's a nice shot. What's that, a banana? Well, it says no weapons allowed when you come into the tournament hall, so maybe maybe Zhao should have a little word with the arbiter there, because that looks quite threatening, just lying there in its black and yellow state, all limp. No, it's he's going to eat it. Yeah, banana's very good, like tennis players, right, Robert? They have a banana in between points.
Banana's
Same
very
with chess.
important. You know,
slow releasing energy.
Yeah, and the games are officially up. We have them on the cast here, and I think that so far in the early stages, I like white's position. I mean, it's very early on. Black made this move knight to a5. Now it's forcing a trade of queens. But still, the rook on c1 is very well placed. By trading the queens, it allows black to not have to worry about its misplaced queen on g6. It's traded off the board now. But like the pawn on c7 is going to become a target. Knight e4 is a pretty simple strategy for white, attacking the bishop on d6. Black is very solid, though. The pawn on c7 will be forever protected by that bishop on d6. And this very solid pawn structure, I think it's approximately equal, slightly better for white.
Right, and we can see he's used a bit more time with the white pieces. Zhao Jinshao. Perhaps Yang Yui is a little better prepared here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're both on unfamiliar territory already, but it's not a very complex position. What will be difficult is creating a very strong plan. I think that there's so many different possibilities here that are approximately the same strength and move that you really have to create a long-term strategy rather than a single move game.
Lawrence, any thoughts on this position?
Yeah, well, as I said, I think I predicted Yu's strategy correctly. He didn't want to go gung-ho. It's not the time to do that. There are 3 games. He doesn't have to go crazy with black. He's decided to play this Rogozin. Perhaps we can just very quickly show the viewers as we had the opening very, very quickly. We don't do this often on the broadcast, but this move here for bishop b4, it's all the rage at the moment at top level. Yu Yangyi is top level, and he's played it. And if we look at the resulting position on the board, knight e4, we can see that it's super solid. White has to work very hard to get an advantage. He can try and exchange this knight for the bishop. I don't know what black's going to do here. Let's say he gets one of the rooks developed. He exchanges knight for bishop, but then look, we have a symmetrical pawn structure. Black has no weaknesses, just dead levels. So Yu Yangyi employing, in my opinion, the best strategy with black in the first round as a top seed. Don't lose, and then take advantage with white.
Well, Lawrence, we'll get back to that very shortly, but let's have a look at the other game, the big matchup between Azarov and Naroditsky. This looks very interesting, Robert. What's going on here?
Well, they've actually been 18 moves apiece, so they've actually been moving at a very, very, very quick pace. It looks like white is very active on the king side. The pawn on g4 means the king can become unsafe at a certain moment. The white is more spaced, but black is very solid. He made this move knight to d8, which I was about to recommend. The idea is that knight comes to d8 to f7, really helping out to remove the bishop on h6 and give him more space. I think that white is slightly better, but not too much better, and I think Naroditsky has good chances to equalize in the near future. And queen to d2 and knight d8, it's the start of the right plan for Naroditsky.
Right, and what would be a plan for white here to continue? Can he perhaps push with a4, bishop d3, these kind of ideas, like kind of Spanish idea, or how could white continue here?
Well, he just looked like he made the move knight to h2, and the idea is to start pushing the pawn to f4. Immediately, it's not possible because the bishop is misplaced on h6, but after a move like knight to f7, you return the bishop back to e3, and then try to break through on the king's side. But black is very, very solid. It will take a long time to crack the stubborn defense of Daniel Naroditsky, so I think I like his chances to hold, at least at this point in the game.
Lawrence, any thoughts on this position?
Well, these positions have been seen for literally hundreds of years. That's not an exaggeration. The Spanish opening, very quickly, again, this is a free opening lesson, free of charge, here on 3 bishop. It's the oldest opening known to chess. It was founded back in the 17th century and is still around, so it just goes to show how solid and reliable the opening is. And we get a position on the board which is very typical of one of the main lines of the opening, where a lot of the action, yes, it's on the king side, but it's also on the queen side. And the big area of focus is this area here. Does black ever push with c4? Does white ever push with a4? It's all about relieving the tension, creating tension on the queen side, because that's where sometimes you find your advantages. If you look at the old games of Karpov and Kasparov, for example, you see that it wasn't really on the king side in the Spanish, but on the queen side. This is one of those really great games where the whole board is being utilized. We're going to see what happens so early on. Daniel Naroditsky is solid, though. Too early to call. We're going to keep an eye on it.
Yes, this is getting exciting, and let's go to the other board between the two Chinese grandmasters. How have they played out this Dragozin?
Well, it actually looks pretty dry. I think that with proper play, the game will fizzle out into a draw. They're both making good moves, but nothing particularly amazing. After a3, the knight retreated to d5, so it's not lost, and he went knight f to d2. I like what white's doing here, because if he get a couple moves in knight to c4 and a5, he's already putting pressure on the black queen side. But realistically, I don't think it's that much. I think that with proper play, not making any blunders, black will very simply equalize and trade pieces, and the game will become a draw. But white is the one with the advantage for the moment.
Right, so how might white utilize the bishop on b1? Can he perhaps move it to a2 on the other diagonal? How might white progress here? You were saying bringing the knights to c4, a5. What about the bishop on b1? It isn't doing much.
I think you just leave the bishop there for now. It's not doing much, but on the a2 to d5 diagonal, it's not really doing much either. Everything's kind of, it's clogged in the center. So you got to start with the knight to c4. Black actually prevented my plan by going knight to b6. So Yang Yu is clearly listening to me and knows that what I'm trying to do.
Well, your advice certainly proved well in the previous round, didn't it?
I guess so. But no, he's playing well. As he's stopping white's obvious plan. He's very, very solid on that queen side. He's got the queen side pawn majority. That means he has 3 pawns to white's 2. And that means that it's very difficult for white to start attacking on that side of the board. And Yu Yangyi, great defender. I think he's really going to do well on hold here.
Lawrence, any thoughts?
Well, we've just had an interesting move in the position. Remember, we have to keep it fast and furious here, 15 minutes each, so we're going to be updating you on the spot. We've just seen the move f4 by Zhao. Now, I like this move a lot. The reason is, in these positions, especially if we just retract one move, black would love to break open in the center at the right moment with this pawn push, this e5. It's a very typical idea in the position. So Zhao, what he's done, and I like it, is he's played the move f4. This pawn isn't really a weakness. It's not on...
And Lawrence is going to put the bishop on a2, isn't he?
No, he's not.
Why not? Bishop on a2, f4, f5.
No, the whole point of f4 is not to play f5. It's actually to prevent black playing e5. So f5 would just loosen up the dark squares too much. He's going to keep the bishop there. It's nicely placed, does a good job of defending the knight on e4, has potential in an endgame, but for now he's going to leave it there. He's just slowly improving his position. He's saying to Yu Yangyi, okay, you got the 2 bishops, but they're not working together. You play a few moves, I'm going to improve. We'll see who can improve the most.
All right, Lawrence, we'll see about that f4 move.
We can even side bet on it as we're in Vegas, but of course off camera, as we're professionals.
Let's go to the other game, see how they're going. Daniel Naroditsky, black against Sergei Azar in this very interesting Spanish. We see that black has played a5. What is the consequences for that kind of queenside strategic pawn structure? As Lawrence pointed out earlier, it's all about how you handle the pawn structure on the queen side.
Yeah, I think the main consequence is that white has used a lot of time. We look at the clocks there. Black is up 4 minutes. He just made the move a3 because he didn't realize exactly what black was trying to do on the queen side. So a3 trying to prevent this move, pawn to b4. And Naroditsky moved very quickly. He went queen to c8, a move I like a lot. It tries to threaten the structure on the king side with pawns on g4 and h3, perhaps allowing him to gain space on that side of the board as well. But mostly, he's just waiting. He's making a waiting move saying, you know what, Sergei, you're white. Show me what you got. Are you going to beat me? If you're going to beat me, throw the first punch. And I don't see how Sergei can do that. So I think Daniel's doing very, very well here. Up a lot of time, has a very solid position, and he looks confident.
Robert, wouldn't White's idea here be to play b4? The idea being that in this kind of Spanish position, White tries to play b4 so that if Black responds with c4, that the square on c5 will always be covered. You can't ever put a knight there, for example. So would the b4 push, would that be a strategical advantage for, not advantage, but would that be an idea for White?
Well, b4, the problem is the knight is never coming to c5 anyway. The knights are over here on the king's side. So in general, that's a very good principle of the Spanish structure. But here I don't think that White's trying to open too many lines because it actually looks like quite a fine move, to be honest with you. I think he would go c4, and then he doesn't want to take on a5 yet because he'll allow the rook to open the file. But in the meantime, he actually made a very different plan. He went king to h1. Daniel Naroditsky's playing copycat chess, so he went
But maybe
king
he
to
just
h8.
doesn't know what to do.
Both sides, I don't think they know exactly what they're doing. And after rook to g1, he went rook to g8. These guys are copying each other, and I really still like Naroditsky's chances.
Let's go over to our Spanish expert, Lawrence Trent.
Well, I don't know if I'm a Spanish expert. I think there's a lot of people out there who would disagree with that. But certainly what I am an expert in is telling the time, after all. I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I wash my hair, put on my tie, and try and look good for the broadcast. All in 20 minutes, can you believe it? But no, if we look at the game, Daniel Naroditsky, big feature, he's got already 5 minutes more or less advantage over Azarov. That's a big chunk already. And if Azarov, we get into these positions, I love Naroditsky's strategy at the moment. Make it difficult for White to have obvious moves. If you do that, he's going to spend more time. You start increasing the time like that and get an even bigger advantage. You can basically flag the guy if you need to. Let's go to the position, though, because they are moving rapidly. We've just had Naroditsky play rook to b7. I believe Azarov as well has played a move. We'll quickly get that through on the relay. There's, yes, f4, and bishop takes f4. So we've seen our first break with this f4 move. It's the first time that the pawns have challenged each other in the game. And you know what? It's still very difficult to call. Black is very compact. He's got everything covered, and he's got this great square on e5 for his knight. He's absolutely 100% going to put that in there just as a nice outpost. And still, Azarov, he's got to prove that he's got any advantage with White.
Okay, Lawrence, before we continue with this very exciting Spanish, let's have a look at the two Chinese players.
Yeah, their game isn't as exciting as the Naroditsky one. I think a lot of pieces have been traded off. It's really coming down to a simple endgame where both sides have opposite colored bishops. They have about even on the clock, which is important because even if the position is objectively equal, if you don't have enough time to maintain that equality, you're in trouble. White is still slightly better. The reason, the knight can come to c4 and White has more space. Knight c4 now is a definite possibility, and if the bishop retreats, say back to f8, maybe you could even start trying to think about pushing this pawn to d5. You can maybe put this knight on e5 here and gain space in the center. The pawn on c5 is pinned to the rook on c7, so I do like White's position, but only slightly.
Right, so how would Black continue here in this position? Can he play knight f6, for example?
Yeah, definitely. Knight f6 is a possibility, and the idea for Black is not to try to take space back. But after a retreat bishop f3, it's still very hard to see what Black is going to do about the weaknesses on the queen side. The bishop on f3 is much better than its counterpart on f8. The knight on e5 is much better placed than its counterpart on f6. I really like White's position, but I also don't think he is quite enough to get a win, at least not yet.
What about if White starts, he's got the queen side kind of ready there. What if he starts pushing on the king side, maybe with g4, with an idea of perhaps f5 in the future?
Yeah, a kingside launch is a definite possibility, but you have to be careful on not overextending as well. You're trying to play on all sides of the board, which means you may not have both sides covered. I think that he may go for that strategy, but it looks like he's actually spending a lot of time. He's whittling his clock down 2 minutes on the clock, which is a huge disadvantage considering the moment of the game.
Well, let's go back to the other game because I believe there's been a bit of an occurrence. In the Spanish, whenever you push a pawn, that's a huge strategical decision. And Black has just played b4 in this position, which certainly has some consequences. Lawrence?
Absolutely. We were talking about pawn breaks before, and it's a very important feature of this opening. And we now see that after Azarov's pawn break with f4, Naroditsky's done the same on the queen side with b4. So White has got a choice. How does he recapture that pawn? Well, we've had a few more moves. It's gone with the a file, and look at what's happened. We've now had a complete transformation in the position. Everything is now completely blocked up. These pawns here, b4, c5, d6, b3, c4, d5 means that there's absolutely no way that these pawns can move. But, and there is a big but, Daniel Naroditsky has got control of this A file. And as we say in chess, if you've got control of the only open file on the board and your rooks are on it, that's normally a good thing. So Naroditsky taking advantage of that. This is going to be a long fight. It's not over at all. We're going to see White contest that. Action all over the board. It's great.
Well, Lawrence, these are the kind of positions where you normally need a lot of time, you know, especially these long Spanish games where each move counts. There are a lot of pieces on the board, even towards the end of the game. How might White counter this so-called A-file domination, Robert? Can't White just play Rook A1?
Well, White can definitely play Rook A1, and right at this moment, I think the main concern I have for White's position is that the position actually isn't bad in itself. There's no strategy to be employed. Black has a clear idea of taking over the A file, trying to maneuver pieces on the queen side. Black's king side is very safe. White, on the other end, is taking up a lot of space, but which also means that if Black can force a counterattack, he's very vulnerable. However, he didn't take over the A file. He's like a queen to C1, and after, he went knight to F3, went rook A2 to make a pin, and went queen to C1. White is trying to keep all the pieces on the board, launch a kingside attack, but you have to be careful when you're down 3 minutes in the clock and running short of time.
Well, that's right. And look at those statistics there on screen. The computer is giving it 50% chance either way, but, you know, practically with 6 minutes, 8 minutes on your clock, I'd prefer Black here.
I definitely prefer Black, and Daniel Naroditsky is moving so quickly. He's very confident in the position. He's wrote a book called Mastering Positional Chess. This is a very positional structure. So he's doing very well right now. The young author is accomplishing a lot even within the very nature of this game.
Yes, definitely. Practically a much easier position to play with Black. Can we quickly have a look at the other board between the two Chinese players, Yu Yangyi and Grandmaster Zhao Chao? This looks like it might be fizzling out to a draw. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, in their game, White is still slightly better, but again, down time on the clock. So it's not a very risky position for either side. It's either White is going to slowly outmaneuver Black, or the game will be a draw shortly. I'm voting for the latter.
Lawrence, any thoughts on this position between the two Chinese grandmasters?
Yeah, well, this is really dull as dishwater, if we can be honest. Symmetrical pawn structure, opposite colour bishops, not much to discuss. Black, all he needs to do is protect this rook on c7 so he's not pinned. A lot of pieces are going to be traded off. I think it's going to end in a draw. I think we should really focus all of our attentions on the really interesting game between Naroditsky with Black, of course, against Azarov. Because if we look at the times, and we'll try and get that up right now, in this game, I believe Naroditsky has got at least a few minutes advantage. Yeah, here we go. He's got a 2-minute advantage. This is crucial, and this is great news for him. In these blocked positions where it's very closed by nature, it means that you can just work that advantage. He should play quickly every single move to make sure he capitalizes on that, and we can see he is playing quickly. Azarov, though, has done a really good job of rerouting this bishop to this square on b2. Now this bishop is looking down this long diagonal towards the king. That's an excellent spot for the bishop. I love the way he's done that. But Naroditsky holding firm with this queen d8 move. He's got a little fortress going on. How's he going to break through? Azarov.
Well, Azarov definitely has utilized what resources he has. He's used the last few moves, as you said, to reroute the bishop to b2. And you know, what happens if he doubles on the f-file? Robert, is Black going to be forced to play something like knight e5 to stop the pressure?
Well, he did double on the f-file, but it's very hard to attack this f6 pawn. Because as soon as this knight moves, let's say to h2, the knight then can come into e5. So the pawn f6 is slightly vulnerable, but realistically, I think it's very hard to attack, especially because all of White's pawns are in the light squares. And that means they're not supporting each other for a pawn break. I think that at the right moment, you can try to go h4 and break open the king side, but I really think that Black is doing well to hold, despite what the statistics and the percentages say.
So when you say breakthrough on the king side, what do you mean? h4 and what?
Well, that's the whole point. The h4, you'd love to go h4, h5.
Well, we can't do that right now because the pawn on g4 is hanging.
Exactly, which is why I wanting to start with the move knight to h2 and then go h4 to protect my pawn. But I just am not seeing it for the white side here. And they're making moves very quickly now because the time is getting short. And White, I think
King h2, what kind of move is that?
He's just making a move. He's not that much time. He's trying not to spend too much, and I think that Daniel Naroditsky is just a much better blitz player from what we've been seeing.
Right. Well, 2 minutes is a pretty significant time advantage in this kind of system, tiebreak system. I mean, you got 50 minutes for the entire game, and with a 2-minute advantage in these kind of positions where you need those extra seconds to think, those extra seconds to recuperate your nerves and just to chill out and evaluate the position, I reckon Azarov might be a bit nervous here. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just shuffling his pieces. What are some plans for White?
Yeah, they're both shuffling their pieces around. I think that this game very well could end in a draw by just them keep on shuffling. If I'm Naroditsky, now is the time I take my chances. As we noted, he's a second black coming up in a future round, but he has to go for it now. White just went queen to e3. You have to be careful. At some point, a move like bishop takes g4 will be possible. Not right now, because you can capture the knight on e5 if I do that, but...
Sorry to interrupt you, Robert, but we have breaking news. The two grandmasters from China have just made a draw in, well, we could say a bit of a boring game, Lawrence, but a draw nonetheless.
Well, it's only boring because we want blood, but actually for a lot of us chess players and fans, it was a good game. They played strategically very well, but sometimes it peters out. Not one for the television cameras this time, but they'll both be happy not to have lost the first round. Yu Yangyi especially being the favorite. He's got white in the next, so we'll keep an eye on that. But just a correct result, we should say.
That's right. Look at them there. They're just going to relax a little bit. They have a chance now to drink some water, chill out before the next game. And as you said, Lawrence, Yu Yangyi will be white, which is a huge advantage at this type of chess here with 15 minutes. He'll be able to command the opening. And Zhao Jinchao will be black. Look at them smiling there. I think they're friends in outside of the chessboard. Is that right, Robert?
Yeah, they're definitely friends, and they came here together, I think. So they're good buddies. They played against each other a lot. And I think they're rooting for each other. Now that they've got their pairing out of the way, they want themselves to win both of the next two games, and that way they can both go on to Millionaire Monday.
Yes, well, we could probably call that a friendly draw for now, yeah? So let's go back to the game at hand. Daniel Naroditsky versus Sergei Azarov. You know what I think? I reckon they're just shuffling around. They don't know what to do. Look at, I mean, Daniel hasn't really improved his position much in the last few moves. And after Sergei's moving the bishop to b2, rerouting the bishop, he hasn't done much either. I mean, what kind of move is king h2?
He's just trying to figure out the right plan. And if he can move quickly and think on Daniel's clock, that way he can save some of his time. He may have some opportunities to exploit his opponent. White is definitely better here. The knight may come into f4 in the near future. It's just there's more freedom for the white pieces. Black is very cramped, despite having no real weaknesses.
That's right. We can see Sergei slowly improving his position. Lawrence.
It's a case of, in these kinds of games, in this kind of tournament, this kind of rapid chess playoff, that sometimes knowing what to do is not necessarily the key. It's knowing how to do nothing well. I think that's the key concept. And I speak with all sincerity on that. Sometimes you've just got to be able to hold the position. It's not about trying to make progress. It's about taking into account, as we see now, Azarov under 4 minutes. He's thinking. Look at him thinking. Look at him eating up the time. Look at Daniel Naroditsky having a quick peek at the clock. He's cool. He's not the one trying to press it. It's White the one with the space. He's not doing anything, but he's doing it well. And that's really the important part. And that's what separates grandmasters from the rest of the field, excuse me, is they know exactly how to do that and when.
Well, Lawrence, speaking about grandmasters knowing what to do, I mean, you're an international master.
Right.
So what would you play with White?
Well, it's a very tricky one because you've got to be able to calculate well. I would certainly have to make a decision at some point with this e5 square. I'm looking at moves like g5 to soften up the diagonal. Of course, the knight is back on g1. I'm not sure what it's doing there. Maybe it'll just come around to e2 again. But black is bereft of ideas as well. He doesn't actually have any particular plans. And as we can see in the position, we've had knight e2, knight e5. Maybe, in fact, he'll go back to g1 and offer a draw. Remember, they can still draw via 3-move repetition. But if I was Daniel Naroditsky, he's under 3 minutes now, I would certainly not play knight back. I would think of something else. He's gone back, so he's offering the draw. I think they might be both a bit nervous. Maybe they're content with the draw here. That's the second time they've repeated. Are we going to get it again? No, I think we've got a new move. I believe Azarov has just played. Let's get it through. Knight to E1. So he's putting all of his knights on the back rank.
Well, he's opened up the F-file here.
Right.
I don't think he's necessarily making a new move. He's hoping that Daniel Naroditsky, with his time advantage, starts to get adventurous, which he's not. It looks like that instead of trying to spend too much time now, Naroditsky knows that his knight on E5 is a very powerful piece. He put it right back where it belongs, blunting the bishop on B2. White is having a very difficult time proving anything close to an advantage in this position, despite the numbers on the board you see 74% in White's favor. I think that nobody's denying that White is the slightly better position, but there's really nothing there. It's hard for him to do anything. He's threatening to trade the knights in D3, but okay, the knight can stay there. Now knight F7 is impossible, I might add, because the bishop will take the pawn on F6, and that doesn't bode well for black. So now Daniel can't do his normal knight retreat, but it looks like he's undeterred. He's sitting there calmly. It's Azarov's move. He just simply made the move queen to D8. So I like what Daniel's doing. If it's a draw, he's happy. He played a great game. I know the onus is totally on White here.
Guys, what I don't understand, if you could explain it to me, why can't Sergei just take on E5 here and play that kind of position?
Well, if you take on E5, let's say with the knight, and you take back with the pawn, well, you have to trade at least one pair of rooks, and there's nowhere to really exploit. After a rook trade on F8, I can just put my queen on E8 right here, and then just protect my bishop on F8. There's no square to infiltrate on. The white bishops are terrible.
The white bishops are terrible.
All the bishops are terrible because there are so many pawns left on the board. So I think that even with best play, even if you open the files, it's very comfortable for black, not much risk.
Right. And I was going to say, let's go to the next game, but there's just this one that we are focusing on right now. We have only 1 minute and 40 seconds for Azarov here. Goodness knows, how is he going to come up with a plan with that less time on his clock? Lawrence?
Well, I think he's actually made a huge mistake in this game, not in terms of the objective value of his moves, but when he was getting down to 2 minutes, he had the opportunity of repeating. Now, it's very clear that he's going to find it very difficult to break through Naroditsky's defense with only 1 minute, 1.5 minutes. So the fact that he tried this new move with this knight D3, it might be the best move objectively, but given the fact that the time situation doesn't really allow for him to be so creative, I think what he should have done is just gone for the repetition of moves, said, hey, the kid, he did well, I'll move on to the next one, because now he's in big danger of just losing on time. Look at the time difference. Naroditsky is 3.5 minutes ahead. It's a massive time difference at this particular moment, and really surprised by Azarov not being the experienced grandmaster that he didn't do this.
I have to agree with you, Lawrence. Why didn't he go for that repetition? That's very strange because White doesn't have a very clear advantage at all. I mean, at least not a very clear way to move forward, and he didn't go for it. That's very strange. Robert, what do you think went through his mind at that moment? I mean, you got much less time. Look at it, he's got 1 minute and 13 seconds now.
Yeah, White is trying to win the game. He understands that he's better, but he also probably is feeling the onus of being White. The burden's on him to prove that he can win. Daniel Naroditsky has set up stubborn defense. He's not going down. I still think that the huge time advantage of the clock really helps black, and not only to just make a draw here, he can win if Sergei is not careful. 3 minute and 40-second edge. That is ridiculous. And Daniel Naroditsky is a very quick player, as we've seen throughout this match, but it looks like they've shaken hands. I'm assuming that means they drew the game.
Well,
oh, wow, they drew.
Lawrence,
okay.
was there any way for Daniel to just try and continue that? Because, you know, trying to take advantage of the fact that Sergei has less than a minute.
Well, I would have played on, actually, in Daniel's spot. Maybe he was feeling a bit nervous. Maybe he thought it was the gentlemanly thing to do because, really, he's not showing any ambition in the game. He's just moving back and forward and saying, hey, come catch me. So in a long play game, for example, the games we saw earlier, we would be saying, hey, why aren't these guys just agreeing to a draw? But, you know, if I were Daniel Naroditsky there, my guy's got 59 seconds left, I might just try and put a bit more pressure on him. After all, you only need to make him make a few more moves before he gets right the way down. I think Daniel's been a bit too nice for his own good there. I would have been a bit more ruthless in that sense.
Definitely stalled there. Just make a few moves, force Sergei to make some decision, and somehow take advantage of that huge time differential. So we have 2 draws in the first round of the tie breaks. Very exciting. Hopefully the Chinese players can come up with something a bit more bloody in the next round. Robert, what are your thoughts?
Well, the players finished the round where they started. They're all tied. They all have 2 games left. It's really going to be a huge battle. I think Daniel Naroditsky looks a little upset, but he showed a lot of class in that game. He moved very, very quickly. He was never in any danger of losing, and that's a very impressive against a strong player like Sergei Azarov. He's moving so fast, and that with 15 minutes to start the game, it just is a huge advantage to be young and quick.
Yes, we can see him there. He looks kind of happy that it's over. I reckon that Daniel came into these tie breaks perhaps a little bit nervous, and he's just pacing himself there. Do you guys know how much time they have before the next round of the tie breaks?
It's a very good question, Ariane. Normally in these kinds of tournaments, they give the guys at least 5 minutes to recoup. After all, they could play for over half an hour, and it would be good to just have a quick breather. We can see there Azarov Naroditsky, just to confirm that again, that was a draw. And in the other game, Zhao versus Yu, that was a draw as well. So 2 draws. They're just going to be collecting their nerves. It's a bit like anything. You start off slow sometimes. If we look at the World Champ, that was the big one for me. I was in India in 2013 hosting the World Championship finals between Carlsen and Anand. Now Carlsen, who's now world champion, he beat Anand over there. He's one of the most relaxed individuals in chess. When you look at some of the poses, he's got his leg over the chair and he's lying back. Doesn't look like he gives a care in the world. But for the first game, I remember Magnus, excuse me, better not choke, that would be embarrassing. Magnus Carlsen on air, he was sitting in his chair. I've never seen him so nervous. And sometimes when it's that first game of a tournament, you just need a few minutes to get into the swing of things. And I can tell you, by the 3rd game, they'll be feeling the blood will be flowing, the testosterone and everything else involved. It's going to be great. And we can see there some of the other tie-break games going on from the other sections. Look at that, frantic chess, big crowds, games finishing up. A lot of money on the line, guys. Even for these amateurs, you've got to bear that in mind. So much money potentially on the line. These rating prizes, or category prizes, if you want to call it that, are huge. To win $40,000 for performing the best of your category is unheard of. So the fact that so much is on the line is so good for us to see. You can feel the tension just by looking at the screen. It's palpable.
Yes, Lawrence. Unfortunately, we don't have access to the games in the amateur section at the moment. However, as you can see there, we're drawing to the close of the first round of the tiebreak, and these guys have less than 5 minutes each here. So they're going to be moving fast, moving very quickly, trying to collect their nerves. So let's look at, I believe we have one game. Do we, Robert? Li Rufeng?
Yeah, we do. Actually, the games are now popping up. Kazim Gulamai playing black against Rufeng Li. I believe Rufeng Li is a very young player from Texas. He's around 13 or 14 years old. One of the many up-and-coming talents. And it looks like in this game, white is up a pawn, but it's not really a very valuable extra pawn. There are double pawns on c4 and c3. There's no way to create a passed pawn. The rook on b4 is a bit misplaced. White is definitely slightly better, but nothing very significant.
Well, I'm not sure if he is anymore, Robert, because black has just won the pawn. Have a look at this. He played a5, kicking the rook, and took on c4. And suddenly, it's a position where they've got equal material. If the bishops come off the board, which they have, we get into this rook ending where material is equal, but white has got this a3 and c3 isolated pawns against the a5 and b6 connected pawns. So black has got a nominal advantage. And these are the sorts of positions where somebody like Magnus Carlsen, yes, he's world champion, but he's a grinder. He would play this on and on and on. I don't know whether Gulamali is going to be able to exert the same kind of pressure, but one thing's for sure, only he can win, barring an absolute hideous blunder. So we'll keep an eye on that one, but looks as though black is the one pushing at least.
Well, Lawrence, in that section, which is the 2350 to the 2499 rating section, we have 3 spots open to challenge international master David Karatorosyan, who has already qualified for Millionaire Monday. So we have, how many? We have 7 players vying for those 3 spots. Let's go to one of their games. It's Ronald Burnett, I believe he's a friend of yours.
Well, I wouldn't say he's a friend of mine, but I've known him for many years. I don't get to see him very frequently, unfortunately. But he's an IM who's been around the block. He's a ton of chess experience. And here he is, the black side of this position, and he's up a piece. But white does have a couple pawns for it. It's 5-on-3 in terms of pawns, but black is up a knight. I really think Ron Burnett is going to take this point home. White's move here, perhaps there's some trick to this move, bishop to b5, and a lot of pieces are on this diagonal. I'm not really a big fan of black's rook on c6 either. I would start with this move rook to b7 perhaps, and try to attack this knight on a4.
Thank you, Robert, for that assessment. Let's go back to the other game. Rufeng Li, has he made any progress in that rook ending?
No, it looks like both sides are kind of nearing draw territory because white is pushing on the king side. Black's king is a little stuck on c5 right now, but perhaps that he can make progress to move b5. I think black does have pretty good chances to win this game. White's just moving pawns back and forth. Black has all the space in the world, all the time in the world. So Kazım Gulamali in great shape to get the first victory in this part of the section.
Thanks, Robert, for that. I think now is a good time to catch our breath, have a short break. We'll be back in 10 minutes for second round of the tie breaks at the Millionaire Chess Open. See you then. We're back. Welcome to the second round of these exciting tie breaks. These four players you see on screen in the open section vying for 2 spots for Millionaire Monday. Lawrence, have you got something to say at this point in time?
Well, it's the second round, isn't it? And they're already off. We're getting the moves through thick and fast, and it's the opening phase. Let's go through the moves. No, we're here. No time to waste. Let's get on with it. We've got the game. Naroditsky with white against Yu Yang. This has got to be game of the round, hasn't it? Young Naroditsky, is he going to pressurize Yu with the white pieces? He's chosen a very offbeat variation. This is called the Sicilian opening, but he's chosen what's called the D3 line, or perhaps a King's Indian attack variation, where he's going to be fianchettoing this bishop on f1, just putting it on g2. This kind of opening has the idea of not really trying to claim a massive advantage and say, hey, I'm going to beat you out of the opening. He just wants to get a position. Remember, he wrote that book of mastering positional chess. He wants to get one of those positions. He wants to just get something that isn't theoretical and try and outplay you. And, well, way too early. This position's been seen many times before. In the other game, Robert, few more moves, another Sicilian, but looks like it's more theoretical.
Yeah, it's definitely a theoretical position, and both sides are going to be jockeying for an advantage. This type of Sicilian gives both players a great chance to win. And it's interesting because Azarov is the second white in a row. Psychologically, that's very difficult because he's like, if I don't win with this white now, I'm going to have a tough time playing black against Yang Yu next round. So look at him. He's got his head in his hands. He knows that he has to win this game if he wants to move on to Millionaire mode. And the position itself is fairly, it's fairly early to say who's got the big edge. I think white generally gains space on the king side, threatens to either push on f5, maybe go g4 and break open the king side. The type of position that I know Maurice Ashley loves. He loves fighting, sacrificing pieces, and Sergei Azarov, we'll see what he does. He may be calm and wait for Zhao to mess up, or he may go all out, put everything on the line for this victory.
So, Robert, what would White's plan be here? I mean, the thing is, if he overpresses, this is a Sicilian. Black's going to get right in there with that bishop on b7. So how would White progress slowly in this position?
I really don't think White wants to progress slowly. I think that you can just develop your pieces normally, move maybe your bishop to e3, move your bishop to g1, but he went for the attacking move that I suggested. He went for g4. He is not scared of his opponent. He knows he wants to make an attack, launch a killer dynamic position, and crush his opponent. So I think that's what's going to happen in this game. I have faith in Azarov to launch this attack.
Wow, this is going to be an exciting one. Definitely one to come right back to. Let's have a look at the other game. Naroditsky Yang Yi. Another Sicilian, but a little bit more closed, is it?
Yeah, this is a
No, Robert, go ahead.
This is a rematch of Game 7. They played in the final round. The two were on 5 out of 6 and tied for first place, and they ended in a draw. This one may be heading that way as well. It looks like pieces will be traded pretty soon, and Naroditsky cannot be too happy with the position so far.
Absolutely. Well, if we look at it, he can't really blame himself too much, Naroditsky, because of the opening he chose. After all, he chose a variation which is known not to really give White much. He's got a position where the queens are off, some more pieces are coming off. It's really quite level. If we look at the clock times as well, Naroditsky with only a 20-odd second advantage, 30-second advantage, not much. We've got a few more moves coming through. C3 was played by Naroditsky. We're going to get the move here from Yu Yang Yi. But in general, these kind of positions, we had a check on E2. Yes, he won the bishop. So there's been a slight change now. Yu Yang Yi has decided to win the 2 bishops, play b6. Of course, he's absolutely fine here. It's quiet, but Daniel, he can't be too upset because he knew he shouldn't really get much from the opening.
Well, Lawrence, I would have thought that Daniel Naroditsky would have played something a bit more aggressive. He's got the white pieces. It's a make or break it thing. You don't just play d3 Sicilian. You got to hope for more, especially against a player like Yang Yu. You're playing this kind of opening. You can't expect much, can you, Robert?
Yeah, but I actually think it's his best chance to win because at some point Yang Yu also has to win. I understand it's his second black game in a row. He doesn't want to make a draw in every single round because that puts all the pressure on the third and last game. So Naroditsky has a slightly better position. It's hard to see how black develops with ease. The rook on the d file is very well placed, aiming down for this d7 square if this bishop were to move. So I do like White's position, and I think that black does have a tough task to equalize.
I guess the critical question in this position is, what's better, knights or bishops?
Oh, the knights are better in this position. The bishop on g7 is stopped in its tracks for the pawn on c3. So I think the knight on e3 can hop to c4, into d6, and there is a lot of pressure that it can exert from there.
Wouldn't White's idea here be to play e5 at some point and get a knight in on c4 and d6? And open up that bishop on g2?
Definitely. It's definitely in the cards, and I think Naroditsky will try to weigh his options, see which strategy is best for him.
Right. Let's have a look at the other game while Naroditsky is thinking there. We have Azarov over there. Actually, sorry, excuse me, Lawrence has something to say.
Well, no, I was just going to say we have Azarov Zhao, don't we? But the position has changed somewhat since we last left it. We saw this g4 move, and you were absolutely right, Ariane. It's a very double-edged move, and what that means is, yes, it can really reap benefits when the attack works well, but if the attack is stopped in its tracks, as we say in chess, when you move a pawn forward, you can never move it backwards, and you leave in the space behind. And here, we've got quite a good example of that. We can see around this area, this can be potentially weak, and Zhao has done a very good job. He's put his knight in on e4 here. I think this was unexpected, because what White would love to do is just snap this guy off, and then say, hey, I've won a pawn, but it doesn't work, because after the move rook a to d8, it's actually black who is totally winning. Let me explain why. Let's say the queen were to move to e1. Suddenly, black's got this beautiful shot, knight to b4, just looking at this diagonal, again, showing the drawbacks of this g4 move. And essentially, if white were to exchange bishops, this check would be almost checkmate, because after, well, you've got bishop c5 check, but you've also just got the move knight takes pawn. You're going to win a rook, a whole rook for free. This position is fraught with danger for white, and Azarov, being the experienced grandmaster he is, he didn't go in for that. He saw that that line would lose. But I tell you what, he's in big trouble in my opinion. I think black is easily better, and he just played this move bishop g2. Shows that he's not really doing much. Now I just like getting the rooks into the center, get these boys active, reinforce the troops, and I think Zhao is on the upswing here.
Certainly, Lawrence, these open Sicilian kind of positions are always a bit trickier to play with white, especially if you overpress with moves like f4, g4. Black can really get some strong counterplay very quickly if you're not careful. And in this kind of time control, you just don't have the time to make these decisions clearer and without those nerves. Robert, how would you progress here with white? Can we perhaps play queen e1, bring the queen over to the king side? What are some other plans for white?
Well, white is clearly screwed up, and it's definitely the psychological pressure getting to him. As I noted, he's the second white in a row. He wants to make something of having that color pieces, but he's really doing a terrible job. He's getting himself in trouble very simply. It's not as if Zhao made him many good moves. It's just that he's playing terrible chess. He went for the g4 attack on the king side, and instead of making an attack, he made his own king weak, and has nothing to show for it. So I think that Zhao is sitting there very happy. Look how cool he looks there.
And look at those statistics. I mean, 92%, that's a bit big, but I think it's pretty, well, almost realistic. Considering the practical playability of this position, it's much easier here to play with black. 92% there is quite a lot, but I'm putting my money on Zhao here.
Definitely, and just the position is so simple for black. He really hasn't made any particularly great moves. All of his moves have been solid, good moves, but it's just with such ease that he's been able to achieve a great position, and that just shows that Azarov is not having a good rapid match here.
Well, Sergei there, he's got his head in his hands. I think he realizes that this was not a wise opening choice against the Chinese Grandmaster. Let's have a look at how his younger friend from China, Grandmaster Yang Yiyu, hero of the Chinese Olympic team. Let's see how he's going there with the black pieces against Daniel Naroditsky. Looks like, gosh, this could be a draw, couldn't it? Over to you, Lawrence.
Well, I wouldn't say that at all, actually. I think Yu has been slowly outplaying Naroditsky. Look at how this bishop on h6 is doing a great job at paralyzing the white position. Robert mentioned before how we would love to put this knight into c4 and then maybe to d6, but unfortunately it's now pinned. And black's got the two bishops. What do we say about the two bishops? They love diagonals, they love open positions. Look at these two guys here, one on h6 and one on b7. They're not blocked in by pawns. They're absolutely free to roam on those diagonals, and as a result, they've got a lot of play. If anybody's better, it's black. And you know what? If I were Naroditsky now, I'd start thinking about how I could bail out here if there's a way. But this is so unpleasant for white to play. I wouldn't bet against a black win here, and that would be heartbreaking for Naroditsky, would almost eliminate him from the competition.
Lawrence, don't you think that this is a bit of his fault? I mean, choosing this d3 Sicilian, not very ambitious at all. And in these kind of positions, you got to say, Yang Yiyu probably has more experience. And these are the kind of positions where you got to rely on instinct.
Well, I don't know if it's solely down to the opening. I think the problem you've got as Naroditsky is if you play something theoretical, you're playing against a guy 100 points higher rated than you, who's just been at the Olympics, who is prepared beyond you can even imagine. So you enter something, and if you haven't prepared it yourself, you're in real danger of just being blown out of the opening from the get-go.
But Lars, you got the white pieces. You got to take advantage of that.
It's irrelevant. You go into one of these Sicilian Najdorfs that we see today, and you don't know what you're doing with white. Trust me, I've been in that spot recently, and you can just get blown away. So actually, I like Naroditsky's approach, but he just didn't get enough. He made perhaps a few errors himself. I don't think it's the opening to blame. I just think it's the fact that now we're seeing Yu show his class. It's not over by any stretch of the imagination. Let's not go overboard. But black is definitely better. And, well, look at this transformation we've had here. We had an exchange on e3. giving white these two double pawns in the center. Horrible looking center here. Black's got a great square for his knight. What he'd love to do is just pick up his bishop for this knight on f3 and have this square forever for his knight. It's not going to happen just yet. But no, absolutely zero chance Yu's going to lose this one. He's going to play for 2 results, and that's what you want in blitz.
Definitely agree with you, Lawrence. But Robert, practically, how can Black take advantage of those double pawns in the center?
Well, the bishop on g2 is well placed to protect the pawn e4, and the knight can simply sit on d2 even here. And it'll be very difficult for Black to really start taking those pawns. White is definitely worse, did not get what he wanted out of the game, but I think he has just enough to be able to hold the draw in the long run. However, it's a very uphill battle, and especially in a blitz game when look at White has less time. We said how quick Naroditsky is. It looks like Black is in the driver's seat.
That's right. Let's go to the other game. Something interesting has just happened. Lawrence, over to you.
Well, it's getting even more complicated than my last relationship. The knight has just come in on c4, and suddenly pieces are all over the place. Black is invading like little stormtroopers in the white position. Look at this pawn on e3. Unbelievable. I don't really know how white let that get there. I wouldn't have let it get there. A bit like having something sticking in you when you're on the plane. You just don't want it there. It's uncomfortable. And suddenly, white is the one who has to think of a way to try start swapping some pieces. Otherwise, black's just going to come in. I don't really know what he's going to try here. Let's have a look at the clock situation if we can. I think Azarov's going to be a bit down on the time. We'll try and get a shot there of the players. Wow, it's dead even. Look at that. That's absolutely amazing. But you can see by his body language, he's not comfortable here. And rightly so. He's got a very exposed king. This pawn on e3. Oh, don't know about you, Robert. I wouldn't take white here.
I think his position is a lot better than it was a couple moves ago, and the statistics back that up. We saw it was around 10% earlier. Now his chance has gone up to 44%. The pawn on e3, it can be either very threatening or a weakness. I would start with the move pawn to b3. It attacks the knight on c4, forcing the issue. Where does the knight go? It just came from a5, probably doesn't want to hop backwards. Knight to d2 looks like a very good try, but maybe I can just take on d2. And if you try to swap on e4, we can go maybe queen takes e4, pawn takes d2, and if this happens, it's very, very unclear.
Hang on, Robert. Zhao wouldn't have played knight c4 unless he had a reaction to b3, because b3 is a pretty obvious move in that position. So certainly he has a plan.
And this very, very well may be his plan.
You think it's a good plan?
I am not sure yet. I think that it looks at first glance like the pawn on d2 is menacing. But if you can just put a rook on d1 and stop it, it can become a target. So I think that Zhao still has the upper hand to seize the initiative. He's up on the clock by a little bit, but it's a very unclear battle.
Let's go back to that position where after knight c4, maybe there are some other possibilities. Oh, here we go. We have a move. He played rook e1. I guess that the idea here is to push the pawn to b4 or b3, kicking one of the defenders of the e3 pawn. Do you have any other plans for white?
I think the idea is just to get rid of that pawn. It is quite menacing, and you don't need another plan when your opponent's in your territory. So I think that Zhao needs to make a move now, and I don't mean that he needs to make a move on the board, but he needs a really competent strategy, or else that pawn e3 can be picked up by white.
That's right. I believe that b3 would be his threat, isn't it? b3 or b4?
Both are definite threats.
What can black play here?
Well, black has many options. One is to put further pressure on the diagonal by going bishop to c6, putting the queen on b7. We like queens and bishops to the same diagonal to form a battery. Another idea would be to just double on the open d file with a move like rook to d7. Rooks love the open files. We can just slide our other rook over and seize that d file. I just think that black has many more easy plans, or white is just banking on the fact that if the e3 pawns, he'll be okay. I do like black's position.
Certainly a risk there, the e3 pawn. Lawrence.
Well, yes, that game's really going to go on for a while. I don't know about the other game, though. Let's go straight there. We've got Naroditsky, Yu Yang. We had a very important moment just a move ago. This was the position. We said how these two pawns in the middle, isolated pawns on their own, their weaknesses, especially in the endgame. I actually had to disagree with Robert slightly. I believe this position is so uncomfortable to the extent that if white doesn't do something drastic now, he's going to be in deep trouble. Trying to defend this is just absolutely horrible because the bishop is always pinned, the knight is always passive. You get a black knight to e5, it just flows this position. So what Naroditsky did is very interesting, and I think it's an excellent move, actually. He played the move pawn to e5, just saying, hey, you know what? I'll give you a pawn, but look what happens after f takes e5, and then we have a mass exchange. Bishop takes bishop, knight takes bishop. It's now black who has got the double pawns. And now it feels like these guys are certainly not that much better than just one of the white guys. And I think this was a great play by Naroditsky, if I can call it that, to try and achieve equality. And I think he's got just enough now to hold the draw.
Certainly very courageous move there, giving the pawn to get that outpost on e4 and perhaps secure a draw. Robert, do you think that that was necessary?
It was definitely necessary and the right decision. Sometimes when your position is so bad, instead of keeping equal material, it's more important to improve yourself. And here, despite having a one-pawn disadvantage, there's not really much black can do. If at any moment the knights are traded, let's say Yang Yiyu goes knight d6 now, I immediately swap off the knights, king takes on d6, and go pawn to e4. And the double e-pawns, although one of them is an extra one, you can't make progress because they can't attack the pawn on e4. They're stopping each other, and from here, this should be an easy draw. So Yang Yiyu needs to keep the knights on the board to have any chance of winning, but I don't think he will.
Right, and with that, let's go to the other game. See how Sergei Azarov is doing here against Chinese Grandmaster Zhao.
Yeah, it's very unclear.
Well, he played rook c8.
Yeah, he did play rook c8. I think that Zhao believes his position is so good that he just needs to make simple position moves, slowly improve his position. But I don't know if it's so easy. I think right now, white may be able to take on c5 with the knight. They're getting rid of that bishop from the protection on e3. You can't take with the queen on c5 right now because your bishop on b7 is hanging. Perhaps bishop takes g2 check, queen takes g2, and now queen takes c5, but still, this pawn is really going to become under heavy fire very shortly. Sooner or later, the move b3 will be played, and e3 will fall. So I think that both sides have chances, but I still slightly prefer Zhao.
You know, this is the kind of position where the computer might have something important to say. Lawrence.
Well, the computer actually likes black still, even if it's only very slightly. And the point is that white's back line is so weak. Even if black does lose this pawn, let's put a sample variation that I've been looking at after rook a c8 here. Let's say white were to take. We took on g2 like we saw with Robert. Queen takes, and actually we took with the b pawn. Now if black takes, if white takes black's pawn on e3 and just plays the move queen b6, suddenly we see that with these open lines that black has and the activity of his pieces, remember all of his pieces in the game, that white, it's not actually that easy. Let's say white plays rook e2, but now you can even play the move queen to b3. And you've got to tell me, what is white doing? With black, it's really simple. I'm moving my rook to d5, I'm doubling. I'm increasing the pressure of these rooks, and all of white's pieces, they're not really working together, and it doesn't feel like white has an extra pawn here. So the computer, and I think quite rightly, and again, this is where computers have increased in strength so much, is that they're not wholly materialistic. They see the bigger picture now, and despite being a pawn down, I think black is the one with the initiative.
Thank you, Lawrence, for that insight. So, Robert, how would you be feeling right now if you were Zhao? You know you're slightly better. You got 6 minutes on the clock. How do you calm yourself down? What goes through your head? I'm just interested.
I mean, Zhao just seems so stoic. I don't even think he needs to calm himself down. He always seems calm. Even when we saw him losing to Jeffrey Zhang early in the tournament, he was sitting there very calmly. And the position is so good for him in the sense that it's very difficult for white to play. The bishop on c1 hasn't moved yet. The rook on a1 also hasn't moved. They're in their starting position. And Azarov knows that this is not the position he sought when he played this aggressive opening. Instead of being on the attack, he's under attack. So it's much easier to play for black. You have to stay calm, slowly progress your position. And as Lawrence just showed, even if you happen to lose a pawn, you still have such a good position. Your pieces are so well placed that you still may have the advantage.
All right, with that, let's go to the other game that probably is nearing onto a draw, but perhaps Yang Yiyu has found a way, perhaps not.
Yeah, it looks like a dead draw now. They traded knights, like I mentioned before, and it just seems like you can't do much. It's essentially an equal pawn ending because the double pawns on e6 and e5 can't create a passed pawn.
Yes, Yang Yi not looking that happy on screen. Lawrence.
Yeah, that's a dead draw. There's no point even going over that one. The 2 pawns versus the one in the middle don't make any difference whatsoever. I think we should focus our attention on this really interesting game, and I absolutely hate Azarov's last move. He sat into a bit of a deep think, maybe a couple of minutes, and sometimes that happens. He looks nervous. He's played this move b4. Now, we were looking at it in other variations, but in this particular position, I don't think it works, and I'll show you why. Black will just retreat this bishop back home to f8, and now if white decides to capture this pawn on e3, black can just take this guy off, and after rook takes e3, we see a tactical problem with the position, is that the bishop can now re-emerge like the Loch Ness monster in the position and take that pawn on b4, thanks to the pin of the queen down this c line. And if you win that pawn, suddenly your whole queen side is shattered. Black's got the 2 bishops. Actually, do you know what? I would go as far as to say that technically speaking, this is completely losing for white. So it means that Zhao, he's having a think about the position. He just needs to drop back. I don't think you can take that pawn on e3 here. That said, if you don't take that guy, look at what you've done to this knight on c4. You've given it a home forever. We loved b3 before, just kicking it away. It's not going anywhere now.
Breaking news, Lawrence. As we have predicted, the Naroditsky game is a draw. Yang Yiyu and Daniel there just shook hands. Having a quick look at the other game, of course, has great consequence for the standings at the end. Both probably worried that if somebody wins, then somebody's ahead. Probably both hoping for a draw here.
Yeah, you know, they really have to depend on themselves. It doesn't really matter what the other game, what the result is, because they have to win their last game, no matter what, in order to get through. Daniel Naroditsky should feel relieved. I think I just saw him sigh. He got a worse position. He had some good hopes out of the opening. Then he just went awry very quickly. Yang Yiyu's very talented, but the position didn't have enough to warrant victory. So Daniel Naroditsky breathed a sigh of relief. He has one more game to go, and we'll see if he can make it to Millionaire Monday.
Yes, this is going to be really exciting, and a lot hangs on this game. We see Zheng Xiaozhao, he just played bishop e7, and he went for the exchange, did he? And
Yeah,
did he take on
He didn't
b4?
take on e3, I believe, just... he has played that, yes, indeed. He just took... There is one little sideline, though, isn't there? After knight takes bishop, rook takes, bishop takes b4. I think Azarov's idea is to play the move knight to g5, a tricky little move, just opening up this diagonal to the pawn, threatening, perhaps not checkmate at the moment, but certainly a devastating blow. So with this threat, black is forced to play either bishop takes bishop, probably does that first, and after king takes bishop, maybe gives a check or plays g6 straight away, something like this. And I still prefer black. You know, white is exposed. His attack isn't really that hard to parry. So I think black is still in the driving seat, although it's very, very complex. I can't wait to see how these guys play.
Well, I'm pretty sure that when Sergei played b4 at that long think that he did see this line.
Sure.
But perhaps, as you said, he's overevaluated his chances here if this line actually does eventuate. I want to draw the attention to the clocks here. The Chinese player seems to be using a lot more time, even though we could safely say it's easier to play with black. What are your thoughts, Robert? As we see, he's played bishop b4.
Yeah, he is using a lot of time. I think that he's nervous now because his position was so much more superior a while ago. The threat of knight g5, as Lawrence just mentioned, is a little threatening. Knight g5, and as Lawrence mentioned, these lines, bishop g2, king takes g2, and g6. Nobody likes to play g6. It weakens the dark squares around the king. However, black is a dark square bishop. Once that bishop returns to e7, the dark squares will be protected. I think Zhao needs to be confident right now, needs to move a little bit quicker. He's down a minute on the clock, but has great, great winning chances.
Well, let's take this position. Let's say that they do play this. What if white here plays rook h3, for example?
The problem with rook h3 is that you have some issues on the c file. I can simply go bishop takes c3, attacking your rook, and now I'm threatening to win your queen with rook d2 check. So there's not enough time to launch an attack on my pawn on h7. And if there's not enough time to do that, well, your position's in
and
shambles.
White's going to start worrying about his king.
Exactly. That king on g2 there's a lot of space. It's very airy around that king.
That's right. I think that Zhao is edging towards a win if he keeps his nerves together. We can see that they're moving. Do we have an updated board position?
Yep.
They're moving very quickly there.
It looks like rook f1 was the move played. A move I don't really like because it does get the rook into a more active position, perhaps so f5 at the right moment, but f5 is not really a good threat. The pawn on e5 will be under attack, and I just think Azarov is clueless as to what he should do. He's just trying to make quick moves and use his time advantage, and he does have a substantial lead. It looks like it's only 30 seconds, but that's a lot given how short the time control is.
And we had Wesley So in earlier who was saying that the Chinese players are extremely good at quick chess. So even though we see Zhao using his time, we know that they're such agile players, especially the players that come out of Asia. They're used to playing a lot of blitz, a lot of tricky kind of positions, very calculated players. Lawrence.
We have a very important move on the board. f5 has just been played by Azarov. It was do or die time for him, but the problem he's got is that it just doesn't work out for him that well. Black can just take this guy off, and after the pawn recaptures, he can happily capture this central pawn. In these Sicilians, if you're white, if you lose that e5 pawn, a lot of the time you're in big trouble. The idea behind the move is that he wanted to play this tricky move, knight f6 check, attacking the queen. So the queen would have to take the knight, and then you win the bishop on b7. But unfortunately, let's say after a move like rook to c7, yes, white wins back a pawn, but suddenly your c3 pawn is in grave danger. And also, just in general, Black's king position is so much more safe with the opposite color bishops. I'm wondering if it's Black who can now start thinking about launching an attack, let alone winning this guy on c3. I don't know, bishop c5 comes to mind. The rook moves. You play bishop d4. Maybe it's coming to e5. I think Azarov's going to do well to hold. Black's the one still with all the chances.
Yes, but look at those clock times. I mean,
You play queen c4.
Yeah,
Still a good move.
It's a good move. It's very unclear. I think it's a safer move. Instead of trying to give up the opposite colored bishops, he's increasing his chances to win. He's not allowing the opposite colored bishops. We've seen time and time again this tournament gives good chances for a draw in certain scenarios. So he's keeping the more material, keeping it complicated, but he doesn't have a lot of time. Maybe it would have made sense to trade off some pieces and make it less complex so he could move as quickly as possible.
yeah, this is getting really exciting. With only a minute left to try and win this game. Did we just see f6? Did you move that or did Sergey move that?
That's on the board.
Wow. Let's analyze this. What's going on?
I mean, it looks very menacing, but I think Black can just retreat bishop f8. And the idea is that I'm going to recapture on g7 with my bishop. But again, there's all these threats with like knight g5. Unfortunately, there's a trap. Knight g5 looks great, threatening queen takes h7 check. But queen takes f1 is actually checkmate.
Boom.
The bishop on b7 pins the bishop on g2 to that king on h1. So you always have to be careful if you're Azarov. That is actually a threat that's going to remain there for a while. So in all these different scenarios, he needs to watch out for that.
And we can see Azarov's time slowly whittling down and the percentages slowly going up in favor of Zhao Jinshao. Now sitting at 75% chance to win. And that mate, very pretty mate, if Azarov falls for it. I don't think he's going to fall for it, is he, Lawrence?
Well, he's not going to fall for it, but I tell you what, he's now under 1 minute 30. That means Zhao, for the first time, has got a time advantage. He played this move, bishop c5. Again, a very good move because you can't take it because of the same trick we just showed before with queen takes rook on f1. Checkmate. This is going to get absolutely frantic. I can't wait to see these guys blitz the moves out. Somebody's going to get heartbroken. I just can't see this game ending in a draw. Can you guys? I think we're going to see our first decisive result of the round.
Yes, I think Zhao Jinshao will be the leader of the tiebreaks after this round.
If he wins.
If he wins, but look at that time, Lawrence. That's just going down. Azarov, look at him there. He's shaking his head a little bit. Oh, and it's gone up to 85% chance for Zhao to win this.
And I think the key in this position is actually the pawn on e5. That's actually quite a funny thing to say because there's so many pieces on the board, there's so much activity going on, but in any endgame, that pawn on e5 is actually very weak. And once that pawn on e5 gets taken down, the pawn on f6 ensues. So the pawn e5 is a target. Black should make use of all the weak white pawns. A move like bishop d4 will be tempting in the future because of the pin on the c3 pawn, the queen on c2. So a lot at stake here. A lot of good moves for black.
And under 30 seconds.
Yeah, white is getting into severe time trouble, which is a terrible idea.
He took on c5. This is terrible for white now. This is absolutely terrible. He's not going to be able to defend after a simple move like bishop takes bishop, queen takes bishop, and now all you can do, you can take any way you like. I'd probably take with the queen here just to keep the rooks on the back rank. And if you can defend against any mate on g7, maybe the white queen wants to launch itself to h6. In fact, we've got this position on the board, I believe, with queen takes c5. He's got 16 seconds left. Zhao's winning this one. I really don't see any other... I don't see how Azarov can save his position.
No, this is where the lack of increment makes it really exciting here. In other chess tournaments, they have an increment where you get an additional 5 seconds each move, or an additional 30 seconds. Here, it's just a delay of 5 seconds, which means you literally only have 16 seconds if you don't move in that 5-second delay there. And I don't think Azarov is going to be able to make this. As we see, the statistics up there, 90% chance for Zhao to win this. I think he's going to take this right home.
And I think he's doing something very intelligent right now. He's up a lot of time. Yes, both players have very little time left, but instead of rushing and trying to make his opponent lose on time, he's spending a bunch of seconds, around 30 seconds right now, think, I know I have a better position. What is the best strategy? And he's moving fast. He's trading queens. They're moving really quickly right now. Rook takes c3. Black is up a pawn. White is trying to go for a back rank checkmate after rook d1, hoping that black falls for rook takes, and doesn't cover this back rank on d8, which would be checkmate. But of course, Zhao will see that. He's not an amateur player. He's been playing a long time, but he needs to make sure that the back rank is covered. He went rook to b8 instead. After rook to d1, he wants to keep that rook protecting his king.
Yes, it definitely looks over for the Belarusian Grandmaster. Still keeping his 16 seconds, though. He's got to move quickly here.
Yeah, he is moving quickly, and actually I think that it's getting less and less clear. He's moving very fast, and now they're trading off pieces. Black still has the advantage because of the pawn on e5 that we were talking about, but if this pawn is protected, and even in any endgame, it looks like there are still chances to make a draw. So both sides are moving very, very quickly right now. It's anybody's game because of the time situation.
It's all about the time now. It
is all about the time.
Lawrence.
Azarov's done brilliantly to get where he is. He was completely busted before, in my opinion.
He's a fighter.
He's a fighter. He's got into this ending. And look how fast they're blitzing out the moves. 10-second advantage here for Zhao. And remember, the 5-second delay. Is he going to lose it? Yes, he's down to 13, 12, 11. He's on the cusp here. It's just, we can't analyze the moves because they're just going too fast. We'll just keep with the board position that we can see there.
And we look at those statistics. It's gone down from 90% down to 78%.
Well, it should be a draw, this position. Unless you can win the e5 pawn, it's just a draw. And they're moving back and forth. Zhao, if I were him, I'd just move quick, quick, quick. Make sure he gets down to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. But he's not letting his delay go. Look at that. Pulled up the sleeve, getting himself prepped up. Look at that. Doesn't know where to... He's won the e5 pawn.
What?
That's amazing news for him. He's won the e5 pawn.
How did he do that?
I don't know.
It looks like he won the game. It looks like White resigned. Man, they're making moves too quickly for us to see, but if this is the final position, it's amazing. He finally won that pawn. I think he was still winning despite perhaps not winning the pawn. The two rooks allow him to make an attack, but Zhao, wow, what a player. This guy was under extreme time pressure, moving incredibly quickly, and he pulled it off.
Brilliant play by Zhao. And does that mean Azarov is out? I'm not sure if it's 100%. He might still be able to come.
Well, he's got one game left. No, he can't.
With a win and Zhao perhaps winning, he can still try and come equal second, but he's now relying on other people. Azarov, all but out of Millionaire Monday, needs a miracle really to stay in, every result going his way. And what a great result for the Chinese player.
Yes.
He's shown that he's a brilliant little 15-minute blitz player, rather rapid player, as well as a long play long play standard player, and he's ecstatic. Look how He's relieved. Look at that. He's really happy. That's almost a fist pump, I think. We don't see the Chinese do that so much. They're very conservative and very modest when it comes up, but you can just tell how happy he is.
And you got to be happy, Lawrence. You know, he's just won his game, and in the first round, he got the highest-rated player out of the way, his compatriot, Grandmaster Yang Yiyu. So, you know, now he's just got Daniel Naroditsky. I think all he needs is a draw.
Yeah, I think, well, a draw, and he's through for sure.
That's right.
And you know what?
Oh, and he'll be white.
Well, he'll be white against Naroditsky.
There you go.
He's obviously very happy. Look at the relief on his face there. It's beautiful to see. But things aren't over just yet. He's going to go to the toilet. You saw some of the security there that we have in place. Make sure that he's not using any assistance at all. And he's going to go and get a quick freshen up. And I think we might do the same thing, Ariane.
The results this round, let's have a look. There's a very exciting tiebreak. We have Naroditsky making a draw with Yang Yiyu. They're going to have to try and win the next round to get anywhere. And Sergei Azarov going down there against Zheng Xiaozhou, who I think is going to be into Millionaire Monday if he secures a draw next round.
Yeah, it's amazing. Zhao is just playing great chess right now, so hopefully he can pull it through.
Definitely, and he will be playing Naroditsky with the white pieces, and I would safely say he's going to secure a pretty safe draw there with the white pieces. What do you say, Lawrence?
Well, you don't know, because Daniel Naroditsky, remember, he's had 2 draws, and if it doesn't go for him, I'm not sure if 1.5 will secure his place there. So, do you know what we're going to see? I think we're going to see fireworks in that one. I think Naroditsky is going to have to go all out, because if he doesn't and he draws, and let's say that in the other game, Yu Yangyi were to beat Azarov, that would mean that Yu Yangyi has 2 points. That would mean that... That's right. Yeah, with a draw, no, it doesn't work. Yu Yangyi would have 2, and Zhao Jianzhao would have 2, and he would have 1.5. He'd be out the tournament. So actually, you know what? I think he has to go all out for the win now.
That's right. It's all in or nothing here at the Millionaire Chess Open tiebreak round. We're going to have a short commercial break, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Until recently, chess was like this. Chess24 brought you this. Live interactive broadcasts from top tournaments with computer analysis and video commentary by the likes of Jan Gustafsson, Lawrence Trent and Peter Svidler. A play zone where you can take on opponents from all around the world 24/7. Interactive beginners courses ensuring you pick up the basics fast while having fun. A tactics trainer to sharpen your chess by solving puzzles adapted to your level. Hundreds of interactive videos letting you watch and learn from star players such as Vichy Anand, Peter Svidler, Paco Vallejo and Hu Yifan. You've given up on that outdated computer? That's why there are more reasons to use Chess24 on mobiles and tablets. Full playzone access, including pre-move. A tactics trainer so you can stay sharp wherever you are. Computer opponents you can challenge even when you're not online. Live broadcasts of top chess events. And the half? It's free. Well, that's half true. Most features are free, but limited for registered members. For a mere $13.99 per month, however, you can step up to premium membership and gain unlimited access to our video library. That and much more. Make Chess24 your playground.
Welcome back to the tiebreak. Welcome back to the tiebreak round of the Millionaire Chess Open. We have our 4 players there sitting, waiting for the 3rd round here. This is critical because if Zhao wins this, he's through. If he draws this, he's through. Daniel Naroditsky there with the black pieces is in a must-win situation if he wants to stop Zhao in his tracks. They have started their games, and before we wait for the games to come up on our end, let's have a look at some opinions that Lawrence might have on who's going through in this round.
Just very quickly, it's simple maths, ladies and gentlemen. If Zhao wins, he's through. If he draws, he's through, as you said, Ariane. I think the onus is on Daniel Naroditsky. Got to play something a bit more creative. Got to keep the chances alive in the other game as well. Liu Yangyi, the last thing he needs to do is lose to Azarov. He needs to pressure with the white pieces here. His style is very positional. He likes to grind things out. He's chosen a very interesting opening. Robert, I'd like to get your opinion, certainly on the Zhao versus Naroditsky game to start.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Lawrence, but I think that there's some pressure on both Zhao and Yang Yu. Zhao knows that all he needs is a draw, but you can't get into that mentality to play for a draw. That is when it backfires and you lose. You're playing too passive. You're only not trying to make the best moves, you're trying to make the drawish moves. For Yang Yu, he's got the pressure as the top seed. He's got the white pieces. If he overextends, it also could backfire for him. But in the given game between Naroditsky and Zhao, I play this position as black. I think black is very solid and does give him long-term chances to try to gain an advantage. For now, white is slightly better, has the 2 bishops, has a pretty easy plan to expand with b4 on the king side. But again, Naroditsky's looking for a long fight. And if he gets that long fight, he could win this game.
I got to disagree with you, Robert. I reckon that Daniel should have taken more chances, perhaps earlier on in rounds 1 and 2. His choice of openings has guaranteed him these kind of solid drawish positions. He can't afford that now. Lawrence, what do you think about that?
Well, it's easier said than done. That's the problem, Ariane. You've got black against a solid grandmaster. It's not like you can just magic something out of the opening. I actually think his choice here is not a bad one because long term, as Robert said, these kinds of positions that we have, and this opening is, well, it stems from what's called the Nimzo Indian. It's an imbalanced opening. White has the 2 bishops, but a lot of the time, black has a lot of targets, namely this pawn on c4, the misplaced queen on e3. Sometimes the knight jumps into e4. Sometimes you even get this f5 move in and can be a bit more aggressive. So I don't mind Naroditsky's opening choice. And remember, if he does draw and Azarov manages to draw, then that would mean that he isn't out of the tournament. They would both have 1.5 points. Zhao would be out in the lead with 2, and Azarov would be out with 1. So a draw still isn't the end of the road for him, but he's got to make sure that Yu Yangyi, his compatriot, the highest-rated player, doesn't beat Azarov. If Yu Yangyi beats Azarov, he's got to win. It's that simple. He's got to have eyes out the back of his head to know what's going on in that game.
Well, Lawrence, let's go to the game to Yang Yu, who has his very first white here at the tiebreaks. He's just had 2 draws with the black pieces. He finally gets white, finally gets to choose his opening. Has he chosen wisely?
Well, you know, it's very early in this game. For some reason, black is spending a bunch of time right now, but it's very, very early. We're only on move 5. So that being said, we'll see how the game progresses. But Yang Yu, I mean, he's got a good chance. He's white. He's playing with someone who just lost. And Azarov especially has to win. If he doesn't win, he has 0 chance of moving forward. So Azarov is going to have to take risks in order to proceed. But it's an interesting mental game here because Azarov knows that Yang Yu's in the same situation. He may also have to take risks. Everyone knows that they have to look at their own board, but also, as Lawrence said, look at the players around them. So it's anybody's ball game at this point. Obviously, Zhao in the lead, but you know what? Anything can happen.
Well, I quite like the young Chinese grandmaster's choice here, a d3 Spanish. Lawrence, what do you think?
We've had a bunch of moves. I think we should just get straight into the position, actually. Looks like there was a slight lag there for them coming through. Let's go to the current position. And you know what's happened? It's one of those typical games. Azarov has to win. He has to risk something. And what he's done is he's compromised his king position with this f5 break on the king side, weakening certainly this diagonal and also squares such as e6 and f7. here in this position, I have to say I prefer white. I like black's last move, just trying to eliminate this bishop on b3. It's a powerful bishop long term. Here, I think white should just play the move queen to e2, protecting this pawn that's under attack. And white's got all the chances, and it's one of those ones. All three results still possible.
Wow, this looks like Sergey is really going for it here. What happens if he takes on d4 at some point? I mean, what's going to happen with, as we saw in the last Spanish, it's all about who breaks first in terms of the center, who can keep the pressure first. What's going to happen here? The pawn on e5, the pawn on d4. How is this structure going to be determined, Robert?
Well, if black captures on d4 and relieves the tension in the center, it allows white to recapture with the knight. And let's say white starts the move queen e2, as Lauren suggested. It looks like an excellent choice. Pawn takes d4 is not a great move at the moment because after knight takes, you're attacking this bishop on f5. The square e6 is especially weak, and white will just move the rooks on f1 to e1 and a1 to d1, and the rooks in the center barreling down on the e and d files look great for white.
And what about that bishop on b3? Not looking too good there, staring at that pawn on c4. What can white do about that white square bishop?
I think white's just going to leave the bishop there. It is very, very valuable in protecting the pawn on c4. And it's not like black's knight on a5 and on b6 are doing much besides attacking the pawn on c4. So white just needs to move his rooks in the center, gain space, and leave that bishop there. Is no better square to go to.
I think that this position is probably easier to play with white.
Definitely, and he didn't take on d4, he didn't release the tension, but still, white is playing very solid chess. He actually took on b3, a move I really don't like, because now the pawn on c4 is forever protected.
And the knight on b6 is just staring at it.
The knight on b6 is just staring at the c4 pawn and it's not doing anything because the pawn on b3, and now rook a5 will be an interesting idea, putting pressure in the center. So they're making a bunch of moves very quickly, but still, I think I like white's chances in the early going.
So Sergey has chosen to push the pawn to e4 instead of taking on d4 and closing it somewhat. He's got two bishops. Is that wise?
It's wise. He just needs to mix it up and play for a win. The two bishops are great for him, and he will have some opportunities to just attack on the king side, especially this pawn on h3. White does not really have that many pieces on his king side, which means that if an attack comes by surprise, he could be in grave danger. That being said, I think that white's position is very, very solid, and you know what? It looks like black has a lot to prove.
Right, and I think Lawrence, the Spanish expert, has something to say about this.
I still don't think I'm a Spanish expert, Ariane. I try and avoid the Spanish at all costs. I'm a horrible player. But if we look at it, I actually really like Azarov's idea in terms of where he is in the tournament, what he needs to do. He needs to mix it up. He needs to create as many imbalances as possible. So getting the two bishops, getting a slightly funky position on the king side is actually a very good idea. This is what we've got at the moment after f3, but I think Yu Yangyi has found an excellent way to proceed. He played this move 17, pawn to c5, kicking this knight away back to the back rank. And after knight c8, he now chips away at the center with this f3 push. Really interesting move, just trying to win a pawn there. And it means that the onus is back on Azarov to prove that he's not in a bad spot. He probably has to take this pawn on f3 like so. But after the simple knight takes f3, the knight now has a great square on e5. I think Yu Yangyi is playing brilliantly and has found an excellent solution in the current position.
Yes, definitely the young talent from China, showing that he's got the nerves and the class to be here in the tiebreaks. Let's have a look at the other game. Naroditsky mixing it up a bit, trying to keep it as unbalanced as possible. Robert, what's your assessment?
Well, I think Naroditsky's done well to try to shake things up. He's just taken the pawn on c4. His idea is if bishop takes c4, he'll always have the opportunity to cripple white's kingside pawn structure by forcing white to take with the g-pawn. I don't know if I would do that. The bishop on b7 actually is very valuable on that long diagonal. But still, he's got great opportunity to try to, if he needs to win, that's the way to go. He can really make use of the weakened king, but I still like white's position. I think white has done well in the early going. Not that white's that much better, but it's just easier to play, and there's a weak target on c5.
That's right. There's a weak target on c5, a weak pawn there. Nice square on c4 to keep pieces. Nice control of the diagonal there with the queen on b2 and the knight looking at a nice outpost on e5. And two pawns on the queen side. What's he going to do with those pawns? Can he push them a5, a6, or a5, b6? What's the plan here?
Yeah, definitely in the future, the idea is to use the queenside pawn majority to go a5 and try to get a passed pawn. For now, if you push the pawn to a5, you kind of weaken the pawn on b5. It softens the protection of it. So that pawn a4, pawn on b5 combination is very good for white. It eats up a lot of space. But it's funny, Zhao is now thinking after pawn takes c4. It's a very important moment in the game. We see Naroditsky once again is up 2 minutes on the clock. He's looking away from the board. He's pretty confident. Zhao has an important decision to make. Does he take back on c4 now? Or does he make a retreating move like knight to d2 to capture on c4 with the knight and not allow Naroditsky to trade that bishop on f3 and weaken the white kingside structure?
And you got to remember that Zhao is in a frame of mind where he knows a draw secures him to Millionaire Monday. And, you know, they say that it's easier to play for a win than a draw. Lawrence.
No, I agree. It is easier to play for a win than a draw. I remember a number of occasions in my career where I only needed a draw, and I found it very difficult because if you try and play too passively, eventually you end up being slightly inferior and can lose the game. So if you need a draw as a general rule, you should just treat it as if you need to win the game like you would in any other game, and you do well. But if we can switch back to the other game, Yu Yangyi is playing brilliantly. I really like his last move. Queen to f3. The point of this is that he just wants to provoke black to play c6. And the reason he wants to do that is not because he wants black to remain solid in the center, because it deprives this knight coming to c6. And now, actually what I like is to just drop the queen somewhere else, something like queen g3. And this knight has now got a simple route round to this really good square on e5. Once the knight gets to e5, suddenly you can start creating concrete threats, and it'll be really difficult for Azarov to defend. So Yu Yangyi in the driving seat in a big way in this particular position, in my opinion.
Well, guys, looks like my bet might be coming through. The two Chinese grandmasters might very well be going to Millionaire Monday. What do you say, Robert?
Yeah, they're the favorites right now. Zhao up a half point in the standings, and Yang Yu have a great position. But it's not over. As we've seen in these blitz games already, time just starts dwindling down. They get nervous, they make mistakes. And I think both positions are still unclear enough, with both sides having chances, that we have to see how the time situation progresses. Because Naroditsky's been up on the clock, and I mean, his first game was huge, and we thought he could keep on playing. And that looks like it's happening again. We saw earlier he was up 2 minutes, and he's going to play on forever. Azarov is doing well on the clock this game. In other games, he's gotten time pressure. He's only down a minute right now. His position actually is quite tough, and they have been making a couple moves. His bishop went to e5, Yang used it, and Azarov is knight on b5. So I think I like how Azarov is handling the position, considering the pressure, but he really needs to do something soon. Otherwise, the pressure could be overbearing.
Certainly, and for viewers who have just joined us, can we perhaps put up the standings there and remind everybody the score? I think that we have only one person who has won, and the other three are all tied, and they're pretty much all in a must-win situation. Here we go, the results of round 2. Naroditsky making a draw against Yang Yu. Two youngsters, two very, very strong prodigies there, and Azarov going down against Zhang Xiaozhu. So Azarov, Yang Yu, and Naroditsky all at the same position in the tournament, or at least in this tiebreak road to the final 4. And Zhang Xiaozhu just needing a draw. Let's go to his game.
Well, Azarov actually has half point less because he lost his last game to Zhao. So Azarov has half and a 2 in the tiebreak.
Excuse me, absolutely.
And the other two players have 1, and Zhao's 1.5. So Zhao continues a half-point lead over the two other players, and Azarov trying to get back in the mix. Looks like Naroditsky has actually played some interesting moves. Zhao followed my path and went with the knight to d2 and took on c4 with the knight. Daniel says, well, if you're going to move your knight, I'm going to move mine. The knight is now on d5, has the opportunity to come to b4, and that's a nice outpost for the knight.
And look at that time differential. I think that is quite significant. At this point in time, Zhao only with 7 minutes there, and Daniel sitting pretty at 11 minutes and 24 seconds, although with a worse position according to statistics.
Yeah, it definitely has a worse position. The pawn on c5 will forever be a target. It's just so much more space for white. It's definitely more comfortable. But I like what Daniel's doing. He's moving very quickly, and as we've seen, if he gets a big time advantage, he can be very, very dangerous. I know I've played him in so many blitz games over the years, and he just beats me up when he gets ahead on the clock. So I think he's trying to do the same thing to Zhao.
Right, but as we saw in the previous game, Zhao was down in time, but he kept his cool and converted into a full win. Lawrence, how do you think the times are going to play into this game here?
Well, I think it's important that Daniel has some kind of advantage in this game. And I mean that from a multi-dimensional sense. He's not better on the board, so he better be better on the clock, and he is. That said, I think we should commend Zhao for the way he's gone about this game. He's got one of those positions where he's got a slight pull, he's minimized risk. Remember, he does only need a draw, and now he's just played a move that I really also like very, very much. Queen to e5, we can see him there swooping the queen into the center of the board, offering an exchange of queens. Why would you do that, you say? Well, it's very simple. The more pieces that come off, the more unlikely it is that he's going to lose when it's already an equalish position. So queen e5 is a great move, and I believe that really, if Daniel needs to continue trying for this win, he probably has to move the queen away to e7, something like queen e7 now. But then that might run into this knight a5 idea, and that's a bit awkward because now if you play a move like knight to b4, suddenly we can take on b7, the queen has to take, and we can just whip this pawn off on c5. And the clean extra pawn here is curtains for black. So queen e5 is a brilliant move. He's shown he's a real pragmatist, this guy. And I tell you what, if he got through to the final four, he would be the most ecstatic man in this whole place, because I can tell you, before the tournament, I bet he really didn't expect that he would come so close.
Definitely not. And let's have a look at his compatriot there, Chinese Grandmaster Yang Yiyu, star of the Chinese Olympic team. How is he going against the must-win Sergei Azarov from Belarus?
Well, I don't think he's made much progress in the recent moves. He definitely has put his knight on a better square on f3, and Lawrence is harping on this e5 square, which it's where it belongs. But still, black is kind of unraveling his position. He can move his bishop to e7 at the proper moment, followed by a rook trade on f8. And if that happens, it'll be very difficult for white to win. As pieces get traded off, the weaknesses in the black camp are going to be lessened, because you need more pieces in this type of structure, especially with your weak double pawns. Because in an endgame, with this bishop here, at some point a move like bishop c2 might actually start attacking those pawns, giving black some counterplay.
And don't you think that maybe he's got the wrong piece on e5? e5 is a strong outpost there, but somehow I think if it was a knight on e5, maybe that would be stronger. But then again, you know, the bishop's got to protect the pawn on d4. How would you reshuffle your pieces here?
Yeah, you definitely want that knight on e5, but you always have to be somewhat careful about some sacrifices on d4. It may not work right now, but at the right moment, there is some potential to pin this knight on d4 for the sacrifice. I wouldn't advise it. I don't think you should play for those kind of tricks, but it's just something to always keep in the back of your mind. But instead, it looks like they're playing very differently. In the game, he moved his knight to h4, attacking the bishop on g6. His idea, if the bishop moves back to f7, now my knight is a nice square in f5, threatening a knight h6 check because the g-pawn is pinned to the king.
And this looks just better for white, don't
Oh, it's definitely better for white. Much more space, you know, just nice nagging advantage, and a lot of time extra on the clock here.
Definitely, with that bishop on e5, that knight on f5, and your pieces lined up on the f and g files, this looks too easy to play for Yang Yiyu, who is also up on time. Look at that. He's got nearly 9 minutes versus Sergei's 6 minutes and 50 seconds. I think that the Chinese Grandmaster might start pushing Sergei right off the board. What do you think, Lawrence?
Well, I actually think Sergei's found a very good solution. I was going to mention it a moment ago. He whipped this knight off on c3, and the point is that after knight takes c3 here, you can't I beg your pardon. After knight takes c3 here, you cannot take this move, take this bishop off straight away. You would love to do that first because of this intermediate move, knight e2 check, which would be embarrassing for white. He would lose the queen. So instead, what has to happen is you have to take this off, but now the bishop finds a lovely home on e4. Once the bishop gets to e4, it's almost untouchable. I think Sergei's solved his problems. That said, it's not as if he's got a lot going on in terms of trying to win the game. So after the current moves, b4, look at this beautiful little diamond formation of pawns here. It's very pretty, but the position is blocked. Remember, Yang Yiyu, he needs to keep chances alive as well. So it's a really interesting moment in the round, because were Naroditsky to win, suddenly everything is up in the air. I don't know what's going on. Maybe we should go to the other game, Robert.
Yeah, definitely. In the other game, it looks like Naroditsky is actually much worse. And Actually, an interesting thing here. Naroditsky might find that he went too hard and overpressed because he thought perhaps that Yang Yu would have an easy go of it with the distraught Sergei Azarov. But if Yang Yu draws, all Naroditsky needs is the draw to tie him and continue a further tiebreak. But now it looks pretty dangerous for the black side. We never like facing an advanced pawn on c6. The idea with e4 to kick that knight away is always in play. For example, if white starts with a seemingly innocuous move h3 and black captures on c6, the move e4 wins the knight, which is pinned to the rook on d8. So Naroditsky has to be very careful or else he suffers a terrible fate. So
well, you got the computer statistics giving him a 90% chance of winning, but you know, he has half the time of Daniel Naroditsky there. Do you think that that's going to be enough? Do you think his nerves are all, you know, in control?
That's actually a very, very good point. When you're down to 4 minutes and your opponent has 9 minutes on the clock, that's a very large time disadvantage. That seems obvious, but I can't stress enough. When you start getting nervous, Zhao cannot lose this game. He cannot afford to blow it. So he knows that if he draws, he's through, and he may simplify and end up in a drawn position, which Naroditsky will be happy about considering the occurrences that are going on in the Azarov game.
That's right, Lawrence.
Well, we've had some moves, and it's really interesting what's going on. Actually, Naroditsky's in huge trouble here. This pin along the d-file is really damaging. If we just go back one move, nice little trick for everybody at home. He just played the move rook d6. This was a little trap by Naroditsky. The point is, it looks as though you can play e4, winning this knight, but that runs into the cute little knight f4. And the point is, if you take this rook off here, that runs into knight takes bishop check, and you actually win the other rook with a completely winning position. But Zhao, you can see, is on form. He didn't fall for that, played the correct move, bishop to b5. And you know what? This is probably curtains for Naroditsky. White is just going to mop this pawn up on c5. Thank you very much. And Zhao is never, ever losing that position. He's the only one who can try and win. He's got 2 results in the bag. And you know what? I really fear for Naroditsky. He's just played a6 as well. I don't like that move. I think now in this position you can just take this off. And if the rook takes on c6, I think you can go back. And if rook b6, you can just take this guy. And you know what? That's curtains. That's a technically winning position. Zhao's never losing. Naroditsky's dream could be over. If he were to draw, however, and Azarov were to draw, that means that he would face Yu Yangyi with 1.5 points each in the blitz tie. I think I've got that correct, haven't I, Robert?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that Azarov has 0 chance of losing the game now. Many pieces have been traded in that game between Azarov and Yang Yu, and it looks like it's going to be a draw very shortly. In fact, black may even be slightly better. Queen takes f3 should be played. And if we just back up, I'll show you how this happened. White decided that he was going to attempt to win, but black decided to trade up everything. Everything came off the board very quickly, leaving white with very little hope. g5 was a nice move. He attacks the knight h4, forcing it back to f3. And after these trades, queen takes f3 being likely, it looks like the game will be a draw because black always has perpetual check, and it looks like white very well may have the same.
And I'd like to draw your attention to the clock situation here. Azarov has less time, about half the time that Yang Yu has, and playing on his mind is the result in the other game because he is in a must-win situation, but he can draw if the other game is a draw. Is that right?
No, that's not right. He needs to win. He needs to win and hope that...
That's right. So Daniel is hoping that, because Daniel's in the situation where he is going to get a maximum of draw. So he is hoping that Azarov makes a draw.
Exactly. And if they both make draws, then Naroditsky and Yang Yu will remain tied.
Right.
And it looks like Azarov is doing his part. It's a tough situation to be in because Azarov needs a win.
Do you think he can win?
There's no chance he can win. And if Yang Yu is smart, he'll just force the draw and hope and look at the other game and see that nothing can happen. So I think that after queen c8 check, which was played, it looks like there's just going to be a perpetual, and I think that Azarov is going to take that half point away from Yang Yu.
Right. Lawrence, what do you think about this queen ending?
Well, the queen ending's a draw. It's that simple. White's king's too exposed, and it will end in a draw. And that means that all rests on the other game, and we've had huge development here. After this move, a6, we saw that bishop takes a6 was good enough, but also the move that Zhao played, e4 straight away, was fantastic. The point is that if black takes the bishop, which is what he did, he doesn't have to worry. This rook is in a pin now, and after a takes b5, the same trick with knight f4 does not work because you take the rook off. Yes, you give the rook temporarily, it looks like you're a piece down, but suddenly these two pawns, you play b6, there's absolutely no way of stopping one of these guys queening. So instead, I like what Naroditsky did. He played the practicable knight c3. This is a brilliant try by Naroditsky. You can't take the knight because rook takes rook is checkmate, so you have to take the rook off. And now instead of this knight e2 check move again, you take the pawn on b5. The rook has to come back. I believe it actually went to d7, and you take on c6. Now, the situation is clarified. Black is an exchange down, but he's won a pawn. Sometimes the rook, which is behind the pawn, and the knight can cause some trouble, but realistically, Zhao should never, ever get into trouble here. This was the only way Naroditsky was going to cause any problems, and you know what? I think that, well,
Lawrence, he looks totally dejected there. He's been shaking his head's meaning in his hands. I don't think he's going to save this one. And you know what? Zhao is going to go through with a win here, despite the fact him having only 2 minutes left. It's a 97% chance of winning this.
I actually disagree with the 97% chance of winning. Of course, white is significantly better here, but it's very difficult. One, but look how much time he has. 2 minutes left. It's very difficult to see through a very complicated ending. Yes, the rook outclasses the knight every single time, but if you protect the pawn on c4 and keep your king on e7, it isn't so easy for white to get in. However, the moves themselves are pretty simple, so he doesn't have to spend much time using them.
Yes. So, guys, let's do a hypothetical here. Zhao wins, and the other game is a draw.
Then Yang Yu moves on.
Yang Yu moves on.
Right.
All right.
And do you know what? Zhao's playing absolutely brilliantly. We need to commend this lad for how well he's played. He played the move rook a1 just a second ago here, trying to use the rook down the 7th. Remember, in these endings, you want to use the rooks to the maximum when there's an open space on the board. And it meant that Naroditsky went passive with knight c8. Knights on the rim are dim, and this knight looks particularly dim there, out of the way, just covering a square. And it means that this king now has an easy path round to c4. You know what? This position now is bordering on losing when it's, oh my goodness, his head is in his hands. He can't believe it. I think it's slowly starting to sink in. We've now got a rook and king and 4 pawns versus king, knight and 4 pawns, but this is absolutely hopeless, theoretically speaking. With so many pawns on the board, if there were less pawns, it would be different. But with so many pawns, the active king position, you know what? Zhao is going to eat this up. This is absolutely devastating news for Naroditsky fans.
Well, you know what, guys? I think, you can see clearly Daniel is very disappointed. He's gonna, 99% lose this game. But I think he's got himself to blame. It's his opening choice, as I said earlier. Round 1, round 2, and now this round. He didn't really go for it when, in this situation, in this point in time in the tie breaks, you got to go for it.
Well, I think this time it's just he was too reliant on the fact that, that he thought that Yang Yu would win. And he figured that if Yang Yu wins, that he shouldn't be solid, and he should kind of play some offbeat moves. He knows these positions fairly well. The opening seemed all right for him, but then he just started getting adventurous, trying to make a win, and when that happens, you often just lose very simply, and which is what happened. Zhao took easy advantage of Naroditsky's obscure play, and now it's all Zhao. Zhao is, he must be smiling so wide on the inside.
Yeah, we can assure our viewers here that this is very easy to play. And as we see, Daniel just resigned. He is out of Millionaire Monday. Zhao is through to Millionaire Monday. Heartbreaking for young Daniel. As you can see there, he looks totally dejected. But as I say, Lawrence, it's his fault. He chose the wrong openings. What do you think?
Well, I think you're being maybe a bit harsh. It's not as if he chose openings that were busto. He chose openings to get a position. He had very little time to prepare. I don't think that was the case. Obviously, he's absolutely inconsolable here. We can see him on screen. He's head in hands, taking deep breaths. He's obviously very, very upset. We feel for the. He's very young, though. He's going to bounce back. He's got to remember that. Obviously, he's lost out on a huge opportunity here. But he'll learn from it, and he's going to be a great player. Already is a great player, let's face it, Grandmaster already. He's just going to have to learn from this experience. I really feel for him. But he should take at least some comfort in the fact that it wasn't like he was ever really winning a game. He never got a position that he totally blew. If we compare that to the David Bercius scenario earlier, when David was totally winning, At least that you feel a lot worse than when you've had a tournament where, you know what, sometimes it didn't quite go your way, it didn't here. Let's check in, though, with the other game. We thought it had finished in perpetual check. Suddenly it hasn't. Yu Yangyi, though, all he needs is a draw. So suddenly, if I were him, I would be thinking, hey, I want to give perpetual check as soon as possible. I don't need to calculate. I just want to give check and make sure I get through. Maybe he isn't aware.
His law is that he has no idea what's happened on the other board. He's too focused on his game, so
right.
He doesn't even know that all he needs is a draw.
But look at the time. Look at the time. He's only got 30 seconds left. Azarov.
Yeah, Azarov is only 30 seconds. But Lawrence, I think this is Azarov would try to play on. A draw is the same as a loss to him in this scenario. He's too far behind to catch up with the draw, so he needs to win. He tried. You got to give him credit. He's in a terrible position now because he just went for it. He had nothing to lose,
right.
And he tried. And back to Naroditsky for a second, as this game is culminating here. Just quickly, Naroditsky had that win against Bu. You have to feel from him. He could have solidified his standing with that win over Bu earlier in the tournament. So he did play great chess. He tried really hard. And for the 18-year-old, he ended in tears, but there's always next time. But this time, the young guy from China, he is killing it right now. He's going to push his pawns up the board. And you know what? If I were him, I would just make sure, I would just take the draw here. What does a win do for him?
But he doesn't know. He doesn't know that all he
has to know. He has to know.
I'm not sure he does know.
I'm not sure he does. He hasn't had time to look at the other board. And guys, I think this is over for the Grandmaster from Belarusia. Not only does he only have 26 seconds versus 5 minutes, he's got a 1% chance of any hope here, 99% chance of losing, according to the statistics. And clearly, as we evaluate the position, white is better.
Yeah, white is definitely better, but I don't understand how he could not know how the other board's doing. If I were him, look how much time he has left. He could have just stood up when the other people were shaking hands and looked at the position. That is actually a bad move by Yang Yu. That's actually, I'm very shocked. It's a very inexperienced move not to check how much you need. He only needs a draw. If in the given position, he can just simply give a perpetual check forever. Start giving checks and the game over, you draw, you move on.
But his back is not faced. Azarov knows what happened because he can see the board. But Yang Yu, his back is to the other board. And when you're in the heat of the moment here, you don't want to get up and look at the other game. And as you said earlier, Robert, all you're thinking about is playing good chess and focusing on your game.
Yeah, but that's when the game is going on, not when a result occurs. Because when the result has happened, you need to know what you need. Because let's say Naroditsky let's say he needed a win instead of a draw, then he would have to know that. Because what if he just tries to make a draw and then he finds out he needs to win? You just have to know the tournament standings around you. And he's granted he's going to win this game because his position is so good. But you need to have better awareness than that. And I think that in the future he'll learn from that. And be better aware. And he just came from the Olympiad. You always have to know the boards around you.
That's right.
That's a team event. This is an event where other direct competitors, but he's going to win. So I'm going to stop criticizing him on that front.
Let's have a look at the position, shall we? Because they're coming in thick and fast. Azarov only with 21 seconds left with the 5-second delay. This is what we've got at the moment. The king's just gone to e8. Now, these positions are a lot easier for the machines to play than us because they can calculate when to pick up pawns with check, when to give the right check. It looks actually at the moment like Azarov has an extra pawn, let's face it. But these two pawns here, supported by the king, it's also the fact that this king is shielded by the pawns in a lot of situations. He's got to play fast. He's played queen e6, queen d6. I'd give a lot of checks here. I'd try and find out what's going. Where is Azarov going with his king? And okay, we've got to move c6. Oh my, that's very nice. Well done, Yu Yangyi. He's played an excellent move. He's played his queen to d6. Now he covers this b4 pawn. So after a check on c4, which has happened, he can advance his king even more.
Oh, here we go. We have a handshake. It is all over for the Belarusian Grandmaster, Sergei Azarov. And we have two Chinese Grandmasters through to the Millionaire Monday. I was right, guys.
You absolutely were right, and they absolutely deserved it too. They played fantastically well in these tiebreakers. It just looked like Azarov was actually outclassed in his games. He struggled mightily with the two Chinese players in particular, and Daniel Naroditsky and Sergei Azarov are kicked out of Millionaire Monday, and you have to be happy look at them, they're friends, they're talking to each other. As I mentioned after their draw, they're very happy for their compatriot, and you know what, it's great to see that. It's great to see them being competitors, but also being friends off the board, but it is heartbreak for Daniel Naroditsky and Sergei Azarov.
And let's have a look now at how tomorrow's matches are going to look like.
Millionaire Monday, our qualifiers. Grandmaster Wesley So from the Philippines, American young Grandmaster Ray Robson, and 2 Chinese Grandmasters. Not exactly what Wesley was hoping for. We had him in earlier, and he said he'd prefer no Chinese players tomorrow. And now he's got 2 of them. Lawrence, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's been a day of heartbreak for a lot of young guys in this tournament, but that's what sport's all about. Firstly, condolences really to David Burgess. I know we've been talking about it for a while during the broadcast, but he was so close. He was in a winning position earlier today. If he'd won his game, he would have gone through to the Millionaire Monday. He would have gone straight there. He busted it, meant he lost out on a big prize. But as for the 4 that are currently there, I think it's going to be really tight. Remember, it's going to be a rapid format. It's going to be a really long day. There are semi-finals, finals. A lot is on the line. We're going to see even more heartbreak. I'm absolutely sure of it. One thing that we can say, though, is that, I've been mightily impressed by some of the underdogs in this tournament, the likes of Burgess, even though he lost today, but also Zhao. He's been absolutely brilliant today. The way he chose his strategy in this rapid playoff, the fact that he minimized risk, he took his chances, he absolutely deserves his place there. I think that it's going to be close. If I have to pick a winner tomorrow, I'm really sorry. It sounds boring, but I have to go with Wesley So. The guy's been so good in this tournament. He's squeezed his opponents when he's had the minimal advantages. He is the better player on paper, but we've just seen how Zhao, we've just seen how Yu Yangyi, they play brilliantly in the rapid time controls. I just can't wait to see all of the action, some dreams come true, and some more heartbreak.
Many thanks, International Master Lawrence Trent. Tomorrow is Millionaire Monday. They are fighting for $100,000 first prize. We have some exciting chess coming up, heartbreak and dreams coming true. Tomorrow, 10:30, our broadcast starts. Please join us. The game starts at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Robert, any last thoughts before we say goodnight?
Yeah, as Lawrence said, there was heartbreak today, but there were also dreams being realized. And what I have to say about the Final 4 in this open section is that Ray Robson is actually a huge underdog. He's not the best player in short time controls. I know when we played together and played against each other that he gets into time trouble with the long time control. You don't have that time to think in such a short period of time. So my favorite, I'm going to second Lawrence here, Wesley So. He's moved into the top 10 in the world after his performance in the first 7 rounds of this tournament. He's a very accomplished player. He's at the peak of his chess career. He's in his prime. He is dominant. I would say that my second favorite has to be Yangyi Yu, who is also playing amazing chess. He didn't get first in this knockout right here in qualifying for Millionaire Monday, but he just did what was necessary. And I think that we'll see a battle between Wesley So and Yangyi Yu.
That's right. Tomorrow is going to be a thriller. I'm going to say goodnight now. My name is Ariane Kouili. Grandmaster Robert Hess will see you tomorrow morning at 10:30. Have a good evening.